Okay, we'll call this closed session meeting to order. Oops, I'm told that we, since we're going to be doing it right after, don't have to do the acknowledgement and the land treaty. We'll do that at the next meeting in 15 minutes. Does any member of council have any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Nope. I need a, where's all the resolutions?
Sorry, one sec. After they vote.
Okie dokie. Right, there's number one. Okay, moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Tyler Moore, and that council convene to a closed session pursuant to section 239, paragraph 2B of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended to discuss personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees. Anybody want to comment on that? That door's got to be closed.
After the vote.
Oh, after the vote, sorry. Voting? Voting is open. Okay, that. And Malik Fernando of Ajax be appointed to the Ajax Public Library Board for the remainder of the 2022-2023 council term or until a successor is appointed. Questions, comments? No? Let's vote. Anybody got number 4? Good evening, everyone. Council's in session. Please be seated. Begin with the land acknowledgement. This meeting of Ajax Council is being held in a hybrid meeting format with virtual and in-person participation by members of the public, staff, and council. This meeting is also being live streamed and may be viewed online at ajax.ca/live. A friendly reminder to all participants, please use your microphone at all times for the benefit of those participating in council chambers and joining remotely. I'll now call this meeting to order. I'd like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is situated within the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas, more specifically, the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, signatories of the Gunshot Treaty of 1788 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. This land is and will continue to be home to Indigenous peoples. Let us acknowledge the mistakes and traumas of the past through authenticity and support truth and reconciliation. Let us engage and celebrate Indigenous communities by being leaders of action and acknowledging the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations towards truth and reconciliation. Let us keep these principles close as we continue towards truth and reconciliation and as we move forward with kindness and respect as a community. We've already done disclosure of pecuniary interest. Have adoption of the minutes. Moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Dyes, that the following minutes of previous council meetings be adopted. The regular meeting of June 19th, 2023, the special meeting of June 27th, 2023, the closed meeting of June 27th, 2023, and the special meeting of September 5th, 2023. Any errors, omissions, questions, comments on the minutes? No? The voting should be in front of you in just a minute. There we go. That is carried. Mr. Clerk, was there any questions submitted by members of the public for question period?
No, there was not.
No questions, thank you. Moving on to delegations presentation.
Pardon, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Our procedures no longer require pre-registration for question period now that we're back in a hybrid environment. So there may be someone in the gallery that wishes to ask a question.
Thank you for pointing that out. Does any member of the public have any questions arising out of tonight's agenda? No? Asking a second time? Okay, hearing none. Moving on to delegations. First delegation, winners of the 2023 World Robotics Olympiad Competition National Final, Rice Rayo, Director of Explorers Robotics Club. Please come forward. Please proceed, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Okay. Your Worship, thanks for this great opportunity to be here. And I am Rice Rao from Explore Robotic Club. So I'm pleased to report that 3 of our teams has won World Robotic Olympiad 2023 National Awards in Canada. So. And 2 of them will join Team Canada as part of Team Canada and compete with students from all over the world, over 85 countries in Panama this year in November. So, this is our first team competing in the regular robot challenge. So this is elementary level, age from 10 to 12. So we have Jonathan Huang and Walter Wu. So they won the first place in Canada. Congratulations. Yeah. So we also have 2 teams in the future engineering category, so which they are building a self-driving car, not a real one, it's a small one. And this is for high school students from age 14 to 19. So we have a team of Aaron Xu, Daniel Chen, and Rudy Srivastava. Sorry for my pronunciation. And they won the first place in Canada as well. So they will also present Team Canada to compete in WRO in Panama 2023, this November.
Nice.
So here you can see the robot is like a 1:18 scale of the real car size. So it's like a mini Tesla. And then we also have a team of Kayla Lin. Kayla couldn't join today, but Martin and Peter is here. So they got the 3rd place in this category in Canada. Congratulations. So congratulations to all the students. And we started from 2016. So Explore Robotics, we have provided like youth robot and programming program. And we have sent numbers of teams to compete like locally, nationally, and globally. So from this slide, we can see in 2019, we are the 2nd place in Canada, and we went to Hungary in 2019. And in 2020, the host country is actually Canada. But unfortunately, we know what happened, so it's COVID, right? So we have to turn into online format. In that year, we also won 1st place, I believe it's in elementary category as well. And in 2021, we won the 3rd place, it's online format. And last year, we also won the 1st place in elementary category and compete in Germany in November. So we would like to inspire more students in science and technology, and hopefully for the future generations for high-tech talents in Ajax and Durham region. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I proceed, does any member of council have any questions to the delegate? Councillor Lee. Oops, sorry, I did that wrong. Councillor Lee. Councillor Bauer, can you press your button again?
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair to, I guess, the delegation, for the 2023, the elementary level, the robot challenge, what did the robot do? The other two were self-driving cars, if I'm not mistaken, right? But what did this robot do? Maybe have one of the winners come up and brag a bit.
So basically, what we did for this year, what we made for our robot, is like what our robot was supposed to do. So first, we would have to create a robot to do a certain amount of things, and then we would have to code the robot then to make it be able to do those things. So this year, the subject was about like clean oceans and like recycling. And so basically, what we have to do is we would have to grab like small containers that were called wastes, and then we have to put them in a certain area using the robot only, like without our hands. And also like save a whale and a bunch of other stuff.
That's awesome. Can you build that robot for my house? Is that possible? But no, just congratulations. That's super cool. Obviously, the future is very bright in Ajax. So congratulations, everyone.
Thanks.
Councillor Bauer, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor Collier. Thank you so much for coming tonight and telling us about these great accomplishments. We're very proud of you. My question is, there's a connection to Ajax here. Is it where you train, or is everybody from Ajax? What's the connection to Ajax? Yeah, come to the mic.
So I live in Ajax, and I have been in Ajax for around half of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Everything like all like I've only been to like Ajax schools.
Mm-hmm. So, and when you do your training and you're working together, is that also done in Ajax? Whereabouts? Is it in a school or?
It's in like a private school.
Okay.
Sometimes we, so all the robots are built and trained in Ajax, and sometimes we use a library, and sometimes we use a private school.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Congratulations, everybody.
I don't see any further members of council willing to ask questions. I do have some certificates I would like to present to the team. If you would like to come up here, and then we'll probably have some parents that want to take some pictures. So can we get everybody to come up, and or I can call them up one at a time, whichever you like. Call them up. Presentation, Durham Regional Police Service Strategic Plan 2024 consultation. We have with us myself as Chair of the Police Board, Peter Moreira, Chief of Police, Durham Regional Police Services, Dr. Bedell Chavan, Director, Strategy Research and Organizational Performance, Durham Regional Police Service, and Dr. Amanda Couture-Caron, Senior Strategic Planner, Durham Regional Police Service, joining us tonight. Before we start, I'll just open briefly, very briefly, and then turn it over to the those that know, those with doctor in front of their names that know a lot more than me. So good evening, everyone. Tonight I'm presenting to you in my capacity as the Chair of the Police Service Board, joined tonight, as I said, by Chief Moreira and leaders from our strategic planning team. Here with you this evening to update you on the current status of our Strategic Plan 2024. We would also like to invite members of Council to offer their perspectives on community safety, priorities, and challenges. The input of elected officials is critical to ensure that the goals for policing in the region align with the views of our citizens. This is a key responsibility of the Police Service Board to develop policing objectives in consultation with the community that we represent. Consultations have been occurring for the last several months, and my colleagues from DRPS will provide additional detail in that regard. Following analysis of the information gathered so far, we've identified 3 broad goals. 1, innovative and modernized policing. 2, strong strategic partnerships. And 3, enhanced trust and confidence in the DRPS. As we have since this project began, we welcome the input of councillors into this important priority setting exercise, and that's our reason for having this on tonight's agenda, to obtain your views. I'm pleased to hand it over now to our DRPS team to provide additional information. Before I do, I forgot one person. We have our Executive Director of DRPS, Bill Clancy, at the back as well, who I just saw. So thanks for coming, Bill. And I'll now turn it over to... Oh, thank you. And I know this is going to be a riveting presentation, but to our friends from the robotic team, you're not required to stay if you don't want to. You are welcome to stay for the next 2 hours and enjoy. But if you choose not to, please just sort of sneak out quietly. You're not obligated. So I'll turn it over to, not you, Chief. So I'll turn it over to Chief Moreira and the doctors to begin the presentation.
I was going to leave with the world
Nope,
champions.
nope.
And congratulations, group. Thank you, Navy Execs. Very, very proud.
Thank you for that.
I want to thank council. It's the first time I've been able to address Ajax Council in my role.
I'm not sure if the microphone's working.
Okay, there we go.
Yep, thank you.
This is the first time I've been able to address Ajax Council in my role as the Chief of Police. Just a little bit better than 5 months ago, I took over as the 9th Chief, and since I've arrived here, I've been just so impressed with this group of individuals. 2 of them you're going to hear from today. They're going to walk you through our draft of our strategic plan for 2024, the priorities and what's driving setting those priorities. And we're seeking your input to help us drive the kind of change and achieve the outcomes that our communities collectively need and want, including the residents of Ajax, as we face some complicated issues that face us as our region, and Ajax specifically, continues to grow. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Chauvin.
Thank you, sir. This is also the first time I've been able to address Ajax Council. My name is Vidal Chauvin. I was born on a cold winter evening on January. I'm just kidding. Thank you very much. We appreciate very much the opportunity to address the council this evening to discuss the status of the 2024 strategic plan. We recognize the critical role that strategic plans play in effectively addressing the complex challenges faced by our organization. That's why the chief requested that we engage in significant and widespread stakeholder consultations so that the plan we eventually develop is representative of the communities we serve and the individuals who work at DRPS. Strategic plans provide a clear direction and purpose for our operations, facilitate effective resource allocation, enhance collaboration and coordination internally and externally, and promote innovation and adaptation to emerging trends and challenges. Throughout the past year, the Strategic Planning Unit has been working towards the development of the 2024 plan. Today, we'll walk you through the process we took to develop the draft strategic goals and objectives, and I use draft very, very importantly because we are looking for your feedback, and introduce you to these goals and objectives. And I would also like to recognize, before I hand over the mic, the work of Dr. Amanda Kuchar-Karen, who you're about to hear from. Her efforts towards keeping this program on track have been commendable.
I'd like to echo everyone's thank you again for the opportunity to get to receive your feedback today. As part of our community consultations, we surveyed 3,712 community members, hosted 7 group meetings with representatives from over 50 service providing agencies, held a town hall in partnership with DRPS's Diversity Advisory Committee, and surveyed business owners. Our community survey determined that the top 3 roadway priority issues for our community members are aggressive driving, impaired driving, and distracted driving. For other community safety and neighborhood crime issues, the community's top 3 priorities are hidden crimes, which can include things like child exploitation, cybercrime, elder abuse, human trafficking, intimate partner violence, and so forth. Serious and organized crime, which can include things like assaults, auto theft, drug trafficking, fraud and identity theft, guns and gangs, illicit cannabis operations, and gender-based crime, which can include harassment, human trafficking, intimate partner violence, missing persons, and sexual assault. The community thinks that DRPS's top 3 strengths are our ability to respond to emergencies, enforce the law, and act professional. 3 areas for improvement include working with the community to address local concerns and crime trends, police presence by foot or bicycle, and police presence in vehicles. Our consultations with community stakeholders revealed a desire to have stronger ties between service-providing agencies and DRPS, dedicated liaison officers for those agencies, as well as for connecting with youth, more community engagement efforts, as well as greater transparency. Oh, I missed the slide.
It's all good. In addition to reaching out to the community, we also consulted with members of our service through our member survey, and by hosting 10 in-person information gathering sessions at all DRPS divisions and with multiple specialty units. 690 of our members completed the survey, which is approximately 50% of our membership. Areas of high priority for our service members include staffing resources, advancement and skill development, training and preparedness, health and wellness resources, facilities, equipment, and technology, as well as the work environment. In terms of staffing, over 80% of the members who were surveyed do not think that DRPS has sufficient staffing to meet community and internal needs, including 36% of the members who indicated that they regularly do not have time for lunch. On a good news tip, however, in terms of health and wellness resources, a majority of the members who filled out the survey felt like the health and wellness resources were comprehensive, were available, and there wasn't the stigma that used to be associated with accessing those health and wellness resources, which of course is good news. The consultations in combination with the chief's priorities informed the creation of our strategic goals and objectives. A team of representatives from the Police Service Board, the Police Service, and from our association considered data from the consultation phase to develop the initial goals and objectives. I'm not going to read all the information on the slides that are in front of you, but the first goal was to be a leader in innovative and modernized policing, and our discussions touched on the growing prevalence of cybercrime, the importance of demographic representation in our ranks and leadership. In our member survey, again, 47% of the respondents indicated training and preparedness as one of their top 3 priorities, which would fall underneath this particular goal. The second goal was to have strong strategic partnerships that enhance community safety. Consultations with community stakeholders indicated that our partners want stronger ties and collaboration with DRPS. Community partners want to know what officers do and want officers to know what they do. They want DRPS to know which agencies to contact when particular crises or situations arise. Partners desire dedicated liaison officers to ensure streamlined communication, and community agencies want a multi-agency approach to responding to mental health crises and would like systems in place to ensure the most appropriate agencies are responding. Our members have expressed their concerns about the growing demands on police officers that extend beyond what they were trained and hired to do, and highlighted the importance of ensuring that the residents of Durham get the supports that they need before and after police intervention. And then the third broad goal was to earn the trust and confidence of members and local communities. Residents who responded to our survey and or participated in our other consultation opportunities indicated their concerns regarding roadway safety, neighborhood crime, and serious and organized crime. Over half of our members who filled out the survey indicated that they have to use their own personal equipment to do their jobs. 29% of our members do not think the physical conditions of the buildings are satisfactory, and 29% of our members selected facilities, equipment, and technology as one of the top 3 priorities to address in the upcoming strategic plan. And again, 84% of our members do not think the service has sufficient staffing to meet internal and community needs. The 2024 plan will be an interactive online resource that will be available and accessible via online devices. And all of the things that are listed on that slide will be included The last thing that we want is a strategic plan that sits on the shelf that nobody picks up. We hope that this document will be organic, will be visited. There will be two-way communication that exists between us and the community to ensure that we're held accountable to the things that we say are important. And then before we get to questions, just want to say that the challenges that lay before us are plenty, both internally and externally. And it's our hope that this particular plan that we develop will help lead our organization into the future. With that, we'll ask for any questions.
Thank you very much. I have a couple on the speakers list, starting with Councillor Sterling Lee.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for coming in today to outline this plan. Very optimistic towards the outcomes, but just a few questions. So ultimately, how representative was the community survey against the census of the region? So like just raw numbers, I think it was about 6% were racialized individuals who took the survey, but I'm pretty sure like our census is higher than 6%. So at what point was it important to make sure the data was correlating to the actual representation of our community?
For sure. So yes, well underrepresented in terms of racialized individuals on a survey. So in response to that, we held a town hall through our Diversity Advisory Committee with the intention of trying to attract the communities that don't normally participate in the survey. And you know, the success of that, I'm not going to lie to you, was questionable. However, we continue to look for opportunities to create communication with communities that traditionally we don't connect with well as a service. So our Corp Comms department is seized with that for sure, and we continue to try to build those relationships.
When you reviewed a lot of the crime concerns that our residents had, organized crime covered a litany of offenses. And I know from a resident point of view, you know, that I'm sure a lot of us get is the lion's share of those concerns are regarding car thefts and this organized crime sending cars overseas. And it's become an incredibly lucrative racket to the point where, you know, like customers don't know if they can put air tags in their cars. What is the solution there? And I know we're not the only municipality going through this, but, you know, this past budget, we approved an increase in officers. We're going to improve future increases in officers. But at what point do like just this very frequent concern becomes addressed from either a policing, either nationally or from a municipal point of view?
No, you hit the nail on the head in terms of the issues and how they manifest themselves in the day-to-day lives of our residents. Organized crime requires an organized response, and to that end, we have partnered with our neighboring agencies throughout the GTA and through the Golden Horseshoe with the OPP, and we're dedicating resources in order to combat the organized nature of this. Obviously, things like target hardening and providing information to people. We have launched days where we inform communities and suggest things like Faraday bags, removing the keys from your front door, putting them further into your home, so that they're not readily accessible and the codes can be tracked. But as technology continues to evolve, so does the criminal element in terms of how they manage this. The solution is a combination of enforcement, and we are working really hard and have made some significant arrests in the GTA. Over 400 cars were recently seized in York region alone, many of them with connections to the Durham region. And we continue to offer our assistance to our partners because we understand it's our residents as well that are being impacted. The manufacturers have a role to play in this, and to that end, working really closely with various ministries, including federal ministries like transportation and consumer affairs, to make sure that there are some regulations in place enforcing car manufacturers to provide the types of security features that prevent and deter and make it more difficult to even conduct these sort of thefts. And so we're working on a multifaceted way to approach and deal with this problem, but it doesn't negate the fact that cars are being stolen every single day and cars are being broken into every single day. And, you know, we're continuing to work hard on that. What I'd also like to see, quite frankly, is some serious sentencing for those that are involved in this kind of activity. And that is something that we continue to advocate for, you know, in the associations of the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police and the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, so that sentencing can also be a deterrent to those who want to involve and prey upon, you know, the working class people.
Okay. You mentioned technology, and I noticed one of the crimes that wasn't kind of in the top three was online crimes or phishing attempts. Have we seen positive news there? Are we seeing a decline of the CRA telling me I have to give them my social insurance number? Or there's that Mandarin one, which I have no idea what they're asking for, but I get that one frequently as well. Like, are we seeing a decrease in that?
Go ahead. You want to talk about the numbers? Yeah, go ahead. Okay. I just never jump in front of the numbers guy. You know what? We continue to see these crimes committed at about the same rate. There are ebbs and flows to these sort of crimes as they occur. I can tell you that no sooner do we identify and shut down one operation, and 3 or 4 more have opened up. Our strategy, and this morning, for instance, I was at the Older Adults Police Academy in Curtis, trying to educate and opening that up to educate our older adults in the region on specifically these sort of crimes. And, if we can target harden, people don't hit that link or send money and are better informed and educated, that's a very effective way of reducing victimization. And so, we continue to work at that. What really concerns me, quite honestly, Councillor Lee, is the emergence of AI technology and how that's impacting how crimes are committed throughout our region, across Canada, really around the world, really. And we're going to continue to work hard at understanding and leveraging the technology for enforcement purposes, but also to better inform how we educate our communities and how to prevent themselves from being victimized.
On that note,
Sorry, just quickly,
please, yeah.
I'll just add that we also added an elder abuse unit. And what we've seen in terms of elder-related incidents has been a bit of a drop year-to-date from 2023 to 2022. Not necessarily directly tied, but we can see some correlation between a focus on elder-related incidents and a drop in this particular municipality.
Okay. So using technology, kind of following that line of thinking, what sort of innovative approaches are we using in terms of using technology to combat crime? Like, is there AI predictors that we can be using, kind of that kind of capital investment to make DRPS more cutting edge? Are there programs other police departments are using that we can emulate in that from a technology point of view?
I'm gonna let my colleague here jump in just a second, but yeah, we're leveraging the information, the data that we collect to better inform how we deploy. All of it is tied together. When you're talking about advancements in technology, we've invested heavily on those units that leverage our e-crimes unit, for instance. Tomorrow at our police services board, an upcoming police services board meeting, we're hoping to put a presentation together that will outline how we leverage CCTV and how we coordinate and put a net around crime that's occurred to solicit that evidence. There's many different aspects of it, but no sooner do we get good at this that the criminal element evolves and continues to change. So we continue to change along with it, and this is an area that continues to develop.
It's also a fine balance ultimately between, the privacy of the citizen. Like, I'm not by any means advocating for facial recognition throughout the region. I think we're not even close to there. But for, dispatching, for example, and you kind of spoke to that already. I want to speak about ask questions about the internal survey. So obviously, for the past 4 years, you both know that this is something I've been really working hard to fight for. And I'm not going to lie to you, it was a bit disappointing to see that only 50% of the members ultimately filled out the survey. This came from, if I'm not mistaken, it was like January 2020-ish, and there was some racial concerns regarding the actions of DRPS. So this is one response of it. So I was wondering, what were some of the reasons that people that you heard either anecdotally or directly that they wouldn't fill out the survey?
Sure. So anecdotally, some of the things that we hear are around privacy. So the higher you get up in the organization, the less diverse in many ways. And so, for example, if you were to identify an individual who was a part of the executive leadership team and identified as a racialized male, there would be only 2. So if we were to slice and dice the data, we could tie the responses directly to that individual. And so there were some concerns in that regard. I think also there have been some concerns historically around trust between the front line and management, and that's something that we're working hard on. And I know that the chief, brand new, has enjoyed some growing of that relationship because of some of the things that he's done to be visible across the region. And I think hopefully that will continue. It certainly has meted out a better relationship with our association. And I think hopefully the next time we run a demographic survey, we'll have a little bit more of a response.
It's ironic that you use trust because you mentioned that you had issues reaching out to certain community groups, and I imagine trust is probably the main barrier between those groups as well. So I'm glad we are making those positive steps. My last kind of comment or question is on both surveys. So we did a community engagement survey as well as internal surveys. Are those to be conducted now annually, quarterly? Like how frequently can we expect these kind of surveys to come out?
Sure. So internally, certainly we'll be doing them annually. When it comes to an external sort of region-wide survey, those will likely be biannual and tied to sort of evaluating how well we're doing according to our strategic plan. But we will be doing regular surveys, flash ones, quick ones, not necessarily as extensive as the one we did to prepare for the strategic plan over the course of the year in an attempt to try to grow better communication with the community, both from us as well as receiving from the community themselves.
Well, I look forward to that. I think it's really important to continue to engage. And just my only kind of feedback is if this executive group could set metrics before each survey is released so we know if we're seeing an uptick, maybe 50% is the benchmark, then great. We shouldn't be hitting below 50% under any sort of circumstances going forward. And it helps manage the expectations of, various stakeholders as well. That said, thank you very much for answering all the questions. I very much look to continue the partnership that the town of Ajax has with DRPS. And Chief, I can't believe it's already been 5 months. I feel like you just came in like last month. So you're doing a great job. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chair.
Next, we have Councillor Tyler Moore.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is at the regional level and your ask from yourself to the police board and the amount of officers that's going to be included in the strategic plan for 2024. Can you just confirm what that number is? I think there's a bigger number as far as civilian and police officers.
Yes, so in our budget that we're presenting to the board tomorrow, so that number there still requires the board to approve it. But we're looking at right now just over 30 officers, and I believe it's upwards of 15 civilian positions within the organization as well.
Okay.
This is net new positions, and it's for us to accomplish, and respond to the growing demands, and not always just dedicate police officers to doing tasks, but creating a greater capacity internally by having some others do some other work that are not police officers.
Right. Yeah. So in other words, you're saying we don't always need sworn officers to be doing work that's still relevant to investigations and crime.
Right, but the organization needs to grow in so many different ways. For instance, people talk about police officers, boots on the ground is the sort of the expression that you will hear. And while police officers are extremely important, what we need recruiting, we need an HR to hire and train those people. We need somebody quartermaster to get all the equipment, make sure it's serviced, and that we have vehicles and that gas is purchased. And all of these things, the technology that Councillor Lee was speaking about in the vehicles to make officers more effective, like all of these areas require people and investments. And so when we talk about growing the Durham Regional Police Service, what we're really saying is growing it strategically so that we're not just dedicating more resources and they're ineffective, but rather growing the organization in a very intelligent way so that we can meet the demands, not just of today, but tomorrow. To add more and more to a small group of people that are already doing so much, we begin to see things slip through the cracks, and that's what I really want to guard against. And so part of our function here and what we're doing right now is an internal review. It's called DRPS Forward Together, and I invite members of council to have a look on our website and have a look at that group in the video we put out. We're working really hard in making sure that we are aligned properly internally, that everyone is pulling in the same direction, and that we have clear goals organizationally, that every uniform division understands the services that we deliver and how those services are community-centric in nature, that our back back-end services, such as our investigative services, are working the right schedules and delivering the right kind of outcomes for our community. One of the things that we will report tomorrow to our services board is, we enjoy a very high clearance rate, amongst the highest in the province, and that's because of the really hard work of the men and women that are engaged in not only the back end in investigations, but the front end in collecting that evidence when we first arrive, and for forging those relationships so that people do provide us the information that makes our investigation successful at the end of the day. All of these things require people and resources, and so my job is to demonstrate the value of the resources that are already that I already have, and then put a case forward to my police services board to suggest that we need more resources, and so
Yeah.
we'll see where that goes.
Another quick question. So would you then frame the 30 new officers that are coming in as vital? This is a need. This is not something that you think would be good. This is something, and is there even a higher number that we need? Because it's funny that you say 80% of the community input survey and the members survey basically saying we need more police officers. Well, I can tell you, probably my council colleagues would agree, when we speak to residents, that's 80% of them say we need more police officers. So it seems like we're all on the same page. But is there actually a higher number? Like eventually you'd like to get it?
Oh, yeah, much higher number. But we need to, I think that figure would scare people.
Right.
I think that our job, my job right now is to make sure that we're asking for what we can attain. I have other challenges, Councillor. One of them is that every police officer in this province must go to the Ontario Police College. The Police College now has a 4th intake that they're now doing. They used to only have 2 and then 3 and now 4 intakes. But the problem is that the biggest services, such as the OPP and the Toronto Police Service, take up the majority of those seats. And so it's left for others, other jurisdictions to fight over very small numbers. For instance, we just had a group of officers that we hired here to go to the Ontario Police College, and at the last minute they said, we lost 3 seats. So we've had to find other work for those members for a few months until the next intake happens. But these are the challenges that we have, and we talk about budget cycles. The starting and stopping of the recruiting cycles are, create huge gaps in terms of us offering positions to people. Because if we don't offer positions, if we don't have spots in the 4th intake, for instance, our colleagues in Toronto will simply scoop up those candidates because they've passed very similar testing and because they have that capacity. So I continue to work with the director of the Ontario Police College and through the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police to get a better ratio of positions in those training courses. So it's not just as easy as saying, let's put 100 more officers or 200 more officers. That'd be a very simplistic way of looking at it. I actually have to get those officers in the police college and trained. Plus, I have to have the capacity as well to do the other training that we do once the officers complete that training back here in our region so that they know our region-specific policies and obviously equipment. So all of these challenges are happening at one area, and I just simply don't want to ask for people if I can't fill those spots, and I'm just trying to be as sequence this in a way that is palpable for everybody.
I really appreciate the insight on the procedures and the protocols. Like you say, it's not just as easy as hiring 100 people and saying go to work. Really appreciate that, and appreciate that you're here and that you're part of this community as a worker. I know you've been part of the community as a resident, and thanks to you and the police board for all the great work you continue to do. Vital work. I can't thank you enough. Thank you.
Councillor Crawford, you're next.
I feel like you've been here for 20 years. Maybe you feel the same way. I think you told me once that your division that you came from in Toronto had more officers in it than all of Durham Region. Isn't that correct?
No, not all of Durham Region, but it's bigger than any of the divisions here. So when the division I came from had just about 350 officers in one division, so the smallest geographical. When I was a staff superintendent, we had about 1,800. I had about 1,800 officers altogether. Yeah.
Right. Now, one of the latest technologies that's been added to the cars is the automated license plate reader. Is that correct? That's fairly new, is it not?
Yes, and they're not on all of our cars. They're on some of our cars.
Can you explain the efficiency for that for officers?
Yeah. Do you want to go on? Okay. So they're constantly running the license plates of all the cars in the traffic beside them. And I can't tell you how invaluable that's been in identifying unlicensed drivers, cars with no insurance. And often those investigations start other investigations. And we have seen even in our region, very serious criminals taken off the street because of this, guns seized, drugs seized. The OPP recently had one that led to a major investigation where I think it was 16 firearms in just one car.
Oh, amazing.
Was identified. So these things are invaluable, and we're not just the only jurisdiction benefiting from it. This is a provincial grant the provincial government gave, and we've been able to leverage this technology, and it creates capacity for officers to do more and engage not just with people, but the right people at the right times in the right areas.
Right. So how long have they been in, I know, I remember hearing about it, I think, it's not been a year, right?
Yes, so they've existed for about a year or so. I think certainly in my time here is when we've rolled to the majority of them out. Like we have, the grant came in since I've been the chief here.
How many cars would have that? Is it per division, like a certain amount per division?
Yeah, every division has some, and I'm sorry, Councillor, I
No,
don't
that's
have
okay.
that figure.
That's okay. That's all right. That's amazing results as a form of technology. I think one of the comments was made that officers feel that they're involved much more in situations that maybe is not their job. So mental illness and drug addiction certainly isn't new. And we do know for a fact that it's spiked in the last year for sure, if not, well, maybe not even less than a year. What are your thoughts on that? I know you probably have many.
So, you're absolutely right. I think everybody would agree that police are probably not the best equipped to handle individuals who are in mental health crisis. Unfortunately, we're the only 24/7 service that is available to do so. What I can tell you is between 2016 and 2022, Ajax saw the fastest growing mental health apprehensions for individuals under the age of 18. So 113% increase in mental health apprehensions between 2016 and 2022. Something to really be paying attention to, obviously. I know you are already paying attention to it in this municipality. So yes, it's certainly something that we are seized with as a service. We have mental health scenario-based training that we've made mandatory. We've tried to incorporate de-escalation into all of our training, including use of force training. And that's certainly been a provincial direction as well. So it is something that we continue to monitor. We have, of course, a mental health support unit in the region that is a secondary response option that pairs a mental health nurse with police officers to respond to incidents. We're trying a number of things to try to ensure that people who are in crisis get the services they need. The other thing that I think is important to note about the region is that upwards of 70% of our mental health apprehensions are with 10 people across the region, 10 individuals who I'm certain are well known to our social service agencies in the region.
So wait,
yeah, sorry,
go
go ahead.
back and say that again.
Upwards of 70% of our mental health apprehensions involve 10 people in the region. There's one individual who calls 911 every single day, sometimes more than once. And these individuals know what to say so that police must respond because we have to, just in case this time, right? So that is something that we are working with our partners across the region to try to help sort out because it would alleviate some of the resource burden on the service if those individuals were provided the services that they require.
You mentioned about, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to add, when this information was first provided for me, I began to ask a series of questions. And one of the things that became really concerning to me is that, just like Dr. Chauvin alluded to, these individuals are already engaged with multiple service providers. And so they are getting help, but they remain in crisis and they remain, a burden to the system, if you will. The concern is that, when we begin to talk about alternate service delivery models, we're still bound by the Mental Health Act that really only lists the police as the alternative for somebody in crisis. you know, the solution to this involves some really difficult conversations in terms of the evaluation of programs that we are already delivering and paying for as a society in general, and looking for those programs that produce the best outcomes for people. The goal here and the real solution is not that these 10 people are dealt with, is that these 10 people are not in crisis and we do enough to prevent them from getting into crisis, or we're just going to be continuously chasing, you know, our tail, so to speak. And it's not the outcomes that these people deserve. They deserve better, and you know, we're big advocates for that.
When you reference the mental health nurse piece of it, have you got to the point where they're actually in the car with you and
Yes.
going to, okay. And how often would you say on a percent, maybe you can't answer this, but percentage wise, how often are they able to de-escalate before action?
Our de-escalation rate is so high. You know, we use force in less than 1% of all the calls we go to. It's a fraction of 1%. We're actually really good at de-escalation despite some of the rhetoric that's out there. Our officers.
Is that coupled with the mental health nurse or on your own?
No, just in general. In general, our officers are engaged in that. The problem with the Mobile Crisis Intervention Team is that it is a partnership, and so the partner is an employee of hospitals, and hospitals are having crunches, you know, staffing crunches as well with nurses, and so, you know, plus the job involves hours that are difficult for people to work in environments that are increasingly difficult to work in. And so it's not for everybody. So, you know, there's a bit of a struggle there with our partner agencies to get, you know, nurses in cars. But I love the program. I think it's fantastic. It really is, you know, one of the ways that we should be responding. But I'm also looking upstream and thinking, how do we prevent people from getting into crisis in the first place?
Yeah,
And those aren't policing challenges.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for all that information.
Thank you, and that exhausts my question list for members of council. Oh, now I see you on there. Councillor Henry.
My apologies. I would like to just touch base on one thing you said with regards to mental health, and was it under 16 or under 18?
Under 18.
Under 18, the RISE. And the programs that you're providing now, I know that there was a lot of work done in schools because I was parent chair at one of the schools, and I know that we work very closely with officers coming in, doing breakfast programs in the elementary schools, which really helped for when the students became at a high school level. They had that connection, that bond with those community officers. And I just wanted to ask about those programs and how they're going, if they're still running, and if there's as many running, let's say, from 2018 as there is today, if there's been a decline or increase in those programs.
So the school resource officer program still runs. It did take a bit of a hit, not this last budget cycle, but the one before. It was one of the things that had to be pared back a little bit. However, it's something that we continue to do for sure. But just to be clear, that is likely not connected to mental health apprehensions. It might help to build relationship, of course, but the issues facing young people are aplenty and have very little in some respects to do with how they feel about police. The apprehension part, however, is where we're paying particular attention so that, again, as the chief mentioned, de-escalation is always top of mind to ensure that the interactions that we do have are ones that turn out with as positive an outcome as possible, for sure.
Understood. And I have to say from a lived experience, because without divulging too much information, we had a child from that area that passed via suicide. I can say that knowing the relationships the police build at that early level is very helpful and did make a lot of children feel very safe. It was a very welcome program, and I'd like to see a continuation of that at a higher capacity when budget permits. I feel it's very valuable. And I understand what you're saying at the levels that where it gets to the point where you're dealing with apprehension, you're in a different situation, but the prevention part, the relationship building is fundamental in my opinion.
For sure. I think in the 5 months that he's been here, this chief has said the word upstream about 34,000 times. And we absolutely recognize that the best way to address mental health is upstream rather than the time when police get called, for sure. The only other thing I'll mention is that we do have a youth strategy. In addition to school resource officers, we have the youth and policing program, which right now in Durham is the jewel of the ministry. And we take in more than 100 students every cohort. And we have made a very conscious decision to try to open those opportunities to individuals who are deemed at risk so that we can start to build some of those relationships that you're talking about.
I applaud you for that because that's where the good work is at. Thank you for that.
Anything further, members of council? Just following up on something that Councillor Lee had asked with regards to AI and facial recognition. And if we're doing license plate automatic reading, why are we not looking at facial recognition in this day and age? It's becoming very common. I mean, I got on a plane on Thursday, they scan your face, they don't even ask you your passport.
That's a great question, Mayor, Chair. Part of it is the privacy commissioner and the rules around it. It can only be used in certain settings, and there are also limitations with some of the facial recognition, particularly around members of our community who are racialized, that there's oftentimes the technology is not as reliable. And so there's a whole host of challenges. I think we're going to get there one day. And we may be there right now, but they're looking at this at a national level, certainly at the Association of Chiefs of Police, and is a conversation that I can assure you that we are part of. And you know, as soon as it's as reliable and defendable as it can be, it'll be something that we will definitely be engaging in wholeheartedly. And I agree with you.
Okay, thank you. Seeing, hearing nothing further, thank you so much for coming here today. Very informative, and I'll probably see it before everybody else does, but looking forward to the final product. Thank you. See you tomorrow. Moving on to our next presentation, item 6.3, update on shared e-scooter/e-bike pilot project, Army de Francia, active transportation coordinator. Thanks, Army. Whenever you're ready, please go ahead.
All right, thank you, Chair. So today I am happy to give you an update on the e-scooters and e-bikes pilot program. On June 12th, 2023, staff presented findings from the project, More Ways to Get Around, E-Scooters and E-Bikes. Council approved staff recommendations to proceed with the RFP process for a shared e-scooter and e-bike program, work with Canadian National Institute for the Blind and other interested organizations serving people with disabilities to implement an education campaign, and to establish a partnership with Toronto Metropolitan University to evaluate the implications of the pilot program on transportation equity. On June 19th, 2023, Council passed the electric e-scooter and pedal assist e-bike bylaw, which permits the use of e-scooters and e-bikes on roads with a speed limit that is equal to or less than 60 kilometers an hour, bike lanes, as well as multi-use paths and paved trails with a minimum width of 2 meters. So implementing the lessons learned from other municipalities would incur a number of costs to the town, as outlined here. Staff received council approval last June to implement an evaluation program by Toronto Metropolitan University, as well as an education campaign in partnership with organizations serving people with disabilities. The program is anticipated to generate revenues of an estimated $27,000, or shy of $28,000. The remaining amount can be captured in the Capital Contingency Fund. So why are we doing this? The shared e-scooter and e-bike program has 4 objectives. The first is to reduce the number of vehicle trips within Ajax by providing alternative modes of transportation to residents and people who provide or use services in Ajax. The next is to assess the risks in terms of the frequency and severity of shared e-scooters and e-bikes on trails and to test risk mitigation measures. The third objective is to increase access to essential services, programs, and opportunities within Ajax, and to get some insight on the implications of the program on creating a more equitable and inclusive transportation system. And objective number 4 is to collaborate with people with disabilities to build a culture of respect for people with disabilities and to reduce the risk of conflict. So, over the summer, the town opened a bid and received responses from 3 vendors. We asked vendors to provide measures on navigating residents' top concerns, such as parking and sidewalk riding. We also asked bidders to provide measures for fire prevention, privacy protection, and numerous other concerns. The selected vendor is Bird Canada Incorporated, and staff have decided to proceed with one vendor in order to optimize coordination, minimize challenges, and maximize benefits for residents. Bird is also planning to have a partner with Scootaround to provide adaptive vehicles for people with disabilities. Bird's community engagement plan consists of numerous methods to reach the broader public as well as specific communities, and town staff will work to support this. So Bird can host their own events, and they can also support our existing local events, such as Pumpkinville and Trail Fest. They can conduct workshops with stakeholders, as an example, the Age-Friendly Committee and the Accessibility Committee as potential examples, sponsor local events, and host events with presentations from leaders in micromobility. And Bird can also hold space for them to listen to distinct concerns among people facing various forms of systemic oppression, such as the 2S LGBTQIA+ communities, people with disabilities, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, people on low income, as well as people with intersecting identities. In addition to promoting and obtaining feedback, these community engagement methods also serve to educate prospective and current riders. Bird will provide training for first-time riders as well as education on rider safety and proper parking. And we even have Bird staff with me today who could answer questions in further detail. All right. Among the top concerns that residents mentioned was parking. And for this reason, we're working with Bird to implement some measures to prevent illegal parking. We don't want to block the pedestrian pathways, and therefore we're using a combination, we're using geofencing in particular, and we're having designated areas where people will be required to place the e-scooters and e-bikes. So I'll have Bird explain that in further detail during the question and answer period. And there will also be safety patrol members who will go around to attend to misparked devices and to also educate people using e-scooters and e-bikes, letting them know that sidewalk riding is not allowed. So these are the proposed annual fees. The per trip fee will vary based on the number of trips that take place in Ajax. And Bird is also offering a number of voluntary contributions. This is for the broader community of Ajax. Assuming a fleet of 250 vehicles, so that's a combination of both e-scooters and e-bikes, an estimated 45,000 trips are expected to take place during the pilot project timeframe. And this is expected to amount to a revenue of just shy of $28,000. Bird has a number of affordable pricing programs to encourage more use of the e-scooters and e-bikes. There is a daily pass, there's also a weekly pass and a monthly pass. There's a business credit program, as well as specific special prices for school teachers, as well as healthcare workers. And what I found pretty interesting was their equity zone pricing. So for residents who identify as being on low income, they receive a certain discount. So I believe that is 50% off. So that's something they could sign up for. And through the equity zone pricing, the town has an option to select designated areas of concern. And if people are starting trips from those areas, they will receive that discount so that removes that barrier of having to register in the first place. And Bird could also provide discounts for specific events upon request that we can negotiate with them. So our next steps are to finalize the agreements, which we're doing very, very soon, and to implement our communication strategy. And then we plan to launch the program at the beginning of October. Around November, it really depends on the weather. It might be in November. We'll have a pause for the winter to collect the data and to prepare the partnerships with Toronto Metropolitan University as well as organizations serving people with disabilities. January to March, we'll prepare the education campaign, the evaluation, and we'll have a spring launch in April 24. And depending on the weather again, we do plan to continue it through the fall. And once we have the pause, that's when we'll be able to analyze the results. And we could evaluate whether or not the future of the program as well as the future of the bylaw to see if an update is needed. Oops. So for more information on this shared e-scooter and e-bike program, residents can go to ajax.ca/e-mobility. And that is the main resource page where residents could find out where e-scooters and e-bikes are allowed, as well as how to report unsafe behaviors. And we have our community involvement page, which is ajax.ca/e-mobility pilots, where residents can shape decisions on the future of the pilot program and do a mini survey that will help to guide our future decisions moving forward with this. For all other concerns, we have a central email, which I thought I put here, my apologies, which is which is e-mobility@ajax.ca. So rather than calling straight to bylaw, if it might be a different type of concern, then it is best to go to e-mobility@ajax.ca, and then we'll forward it to the appropriate contact. And that is my presentation.
Thank you, Army. We have two councils wanting to speak to this. First is questions, Rob Tyler Moore.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your presentation and just thinking outside of the box like that. Just so I'm clear, so you're estimating, of course, that there's going to be revenue from this program for TOA. Okay, $27,950-ish. And I'm glad to see this is a pilot program because, it's a bit of an unknown. Okay, just wanted to get that straight because I'm looking at that, so it's good to see. Thank you. That's a quick question. Thank you.
Councillor Henry, you're next.
Thank you. Through the mayor. First, I'd like to start off by saying thank you very much for all the time you've taken to prepare this presentation. I know you've listened to multiple groups, including Accessibility Committee. You've listened to council. You've taken all our feedback, and it looks like you've done a great job with it because this presentation is fantastic. So thank you for listening to us very diligently. When you speak of the email you just did a minute ago, will there also be something included on the town's page, the IMO? So for trying to simplify things, if there's a reporting issue when the time comes through this pilot project, and instead of folks bombarding bylaw with calls, will there be something in AppJax or something where there can be a reporting feature if the scooters are not where they're should be parked? And I know you're working diligently to make sure that you have all that in place, but things can go awry. And if they do, what's going to be in place for reporting issues so that we're not putting all that onto the bylaw?
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Henry, for pointing that out. So on ajax.ca/e-mobility, we do explained the reporting process, and the preferred way is to email emobility@ajax.ca for general reporting on those types of issues, and then from there we could direct to the appropriate contact. It also explains where to contact the police, so that is specifically sidewalk riding, where it provides a link to the reporting page for DRPS. And we haven't included this just yet because we're still, we just worked on the agreement, we just selected Bird, but we'll also include a contact email, possibly a link as well for misbehaviors that, or unsafe behaviors that are specific to devices that are provided by Bird. So that'll be provided soon and updated on ajax.ca/emobility.
I'd like to make the suggestion, depending the work through the CAO's office, to perhaps have this through the Ajax app, just because it's a simplified way of reporting that can lead back to the emails you suggested, in case for at the beginning folks don't see that. That's my only suggestion, but thank you for everything.
Oh, through the chair, thank you. I forgot to speak about AppJax. So I believe we had a conversation with communications about linking, I'm not sure if it was the IMO or the emobility@ajax.ca, but the point is we will be linking AppJax to one of those platforms.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Mayor Collier. Thank you so much for the presentation. Excellent information. Really looking forward to seeing this. So can you please remind me, what was the partnership with TMU? What is that all about again?
Sure. Through the chair to Councillor Bauer. So the partnership with Toronto Metropolitan University is to basically get an idea of who is benefiting from the shared e-scooter and e-bike program. And that'll help us get an idea of, is there just a specific group, or is there ways that we can make it more inclusive so that everyone can benefit?
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And is Bird Canada the vendor that previously presented to council back in June or at that demo day?
Through the chair, yes, they were there.
Okay, thank you. And just, I love the pricing plans that are being talked about. Congratulations on that. I think it's very smart. And I'm trying to envision, so when this comes into play, there will be various scooter lots that people will go to? Is that how that will work?
Yes. Sure, go ahead.
How's it going? Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Pat Graham from Bird Canada. I'm our head of Ontario operations. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. And to answer your question, Councillor Bauer, what we'll do is set up designated parking locations through our app, through a designated geofence. So you'll only be able to end your ride in certain locations that we'll pre-approve with city staff over the next few weeks. So basically, you might see in other municipalities where you can leave your vehicle anywhere within the public right-of-way, as long as it's off the sidewalk in the, we call it it's the boulevard, but the furniture zone. That won't be the case here. So when you open up the Bird app, you'll see, quite a few black Ps all over the map in Ajax. And within that, those will be the only locations where you can end or start your ride. So if you try and end your ride outside one of those locations, it will not allow you to do that. You'll have to actually go to that physical geofence location, and that's only one of the only many places across the town that you'll be able to actually end your ride. It's the same way we operate in Ottawa. So in Ottawa, we have quite a variety of parking locations across the city, and those are the only places you can end your ride. And that's in conjunction with the accessibility community and CNIB there. We've received kind of top marks for operations in terms of making sure scooters are parked in appropriate locations by restricting it to some degree more than a lot of other municipalities have in other locations.
Okay, great. Thank you. And do you have an estimate, like how many of these lots you expect to have in Ajax?
We haven't fully confirmed that yet. I would assume kind of close to 100. We want to make sure it's, very easy, so you don't have to, walk very far to go find that location. But we're going to basically spend the next 2 weeks canvassing the town to make sure that we're finding appropriate locations so that when, someone is leaving an e-scooter or an e-bike in a certain spot, it's not on the sidewalk. We want to find, street corners and things like that that have the appropriate area for us to leave those versus, picking some place that maybe doesn't have enough space, which will force a user to end their ride in a location that might block, a pedestrian or something like that from accessing the sidewalk or something of that kind.
Right, thank you. And do you have any stats on, so vandalism or theft, attempted theft of these items that are left? Scooters, I should say?
Yeah, we not like necessarily stats, I would say, that we could share. We do see, some type of theft and vandalism in every, municipality that we operate in, but nothing that's, of concern, I would say. We operate pretty autonomously in terms of retrieving our vehicles and finding, like each vehicle has, multiple GPS trackers. So, at first, we do find maybe and people don't really know what they are. They're not sure that it's not just a personal thing they can grab or something. Maybe they say that, but they're a little confused as to how it works. So they might take it home, think they could rent it for the day or something like that. And we'll go retrieve them and bring it back. And typically after the first, few weeks, those things go away pretty quickly as people realize they're meant to be used, for the public and not something you can take home for your personal use. So it's much more minor than maybe, different media outlets or things like that may outline, and it's not a concern of ours as we enter into Ajax.
Great, thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Thank you. That exhausts our speaker list, so thank you very much for the presentation. That concludes presentations and delegations today. Moving on to correspondence. I have 2 polls for items of correspondence. Councillor Lee, you had number 15. Councillor Crawford, you had number 24. Is there any other polls from correspondence? Councillor Bauer? Can you press your mic, please?
Number 13, please.
Number 13. Do you have direction for that?
For endorsement.
Endorse. Okay. Anything further? Okay, I moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Tyler Moore, that the report dated September 18, 2023, containing items of correspondence be received for information except for items 13, 15, and 24. Those in favor, voting should be up shortly. Okay, that is carried. Going now to Councillor Bauer, item 13.
Thank you, Mayor Collier. Yes, this is something that has come in front of council before. We were one of the municipalities to provide our support in favor of Bill 5, Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act. Surprisingly, it was voted down, which I think is a shame. And so AMO has come forward asking, recommending changes to strengthen municipal codes of conduct for elected officials. The correspondence lists a templated motion asking for support, which I think, as Ajax Council has already supported this, that we should continue, and I ask that this be endorsed. Thank you.
Motion to endorse, we have a seconder? Second by Councillor Dyes. Let me read this quickly, 1 second. Any questions before I ask mine? So, if this has already been turned down and this is a new motion, is this motion going to the same level of government? Still going to the province? Councillor Bauer?
Yes, the correspondence says we are asking that a letter expressing support for the motion be sent to the Premier, local MPPs, the Minister of Municipal Affairs, Associate Minister of Women's Social and Economic Opportunity, AMO, and local municipalities.
I'm fine to support it. I'm just wondering, how is this any different than the last one that's already been voted down? I mean, here, if we have something that is voted down, we can't bring it back for a year.
Well, here, the motion itself speaks to that all Ontarians deserve and expect a safe and respectful workplace. It goes on and on about making the changes. I mean, I could read it for you, but
I just read it.
yeah. So I think it's important that we endorse this, because just because it died doesn't mean that we should forget about it. So I would ask that we continue our support of supporting a motion that protects people from harassment.
Okay, thank you. Just a question, I guess through me to the clerk. This body of this is asking for us to pass a new motion, which is in the correspondence. So if we endorse, is that passing that motion that's in the correspondence, or do we need to bring forward this motion either today or at another time?
I would interpret the motion to endorse as endorsing the wording contained on page 52 in the attachment to the correspondence, and that's how we would characterize it in the correspondence that we send out after this meeting.
Okay, thank you. Anything further by members of council? Nope. Vote to motion to endorse. That is carried. Item 15, Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. We, similar to Councilor Bauer, we passed a motion asking the province to regulate short-term rentals. I feel since that motion's passed, we're seeing even more pressure on the housing market to free up these rentals to actually be legitimate long-term rentals instead of short-term profits. And more importantly, it's ensuring more ownership regarding the vendors to manage these properties more instead of just claiming third-party status. Because, Councilor Henry and I are seeing increase in, we'll call them party homes that are becoming a burden on residents. So very similar to Councilor Bauer, hoping to endorse this as our previous position.
Okay, that's moved by yourself, second by Councilor Henry.
I fairly assume so, yes.
Okay, anybody else have questions or comments on item 15? Short-term rentals, no? And the vote. That carries. And finally, item 24, Councillor Crawford. Sorry, kind of get with the program here. There we go.
Thank you. This is a motion that was passed at Big City Mayors back in August when we were at AMO around the finding support for the newcomers and including refugees and asylum seekers. There's no action I wish to take on this. Just to let everybody know that Durham Region did receive $840,000 with their ask. I'm not sure that that's enough. Because this continues to grow on a daily basis. I've had a couple of meetings with Community Safety and Wellbeing Committee and also through through our finance last week, we talked about this and that it is an ever-growing concern and needs to continue to be. This is a one-time interjection from what we had over the summertime of 200 asylum seekers come through Durham Region, but it hasn't stopped. So we're going to need to continue to track and to invoice, whether it's the federal government or the provincial government, to make sure that we're getting our money back, right? In order to put it in the right places. I don't think any other action really.
Anybody else wish to comment on this before I do? I'll just add, this has been extremely frustrating. We were inundated with asylum seekers from Toronto. We at the region still, the region still has not received their share of funding from the federal government for the Afghan and Ukrainian refugees that we brought here last year. And we went through the application process and were declined for the first round. And then after reaching out to our MP, Mark Holland, when all this happened in Ajax and when we were just overrun and regional resources were exhausted completely, the federal government came out with $200 million of unbudgeted funding and immediately allocated $90 million to Toronto. I believe Hamilton's got 40, and everybody else has to go through the application process. Meanwhile, regional resources are stretched to the breaking point. They had refugees in Durham College housing, which now obviously they've had to leave there. Now they're in all the hotels and motels around our municipality with no funding from the federal government as of yet. So that's why Ontario Big City Mayors, we discussed this, brought this forward. I have already signed off on this at that level. But yeah, just, I'm glad Councillor Crawford has pulled this just to discuss, because I think a lot of people just aren't aware that that is the situation. And this is a federal responsibility. They are approving immigration, and I'm happy to have immigration, absolutely. But if they're going to allow this, we can't be having our homeless grow by 40% in one day because asylum seekers come here and we can't house them. So hope this does something. I'll leave it there. This is just a motion to receive. Moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Bauer. Those in favor? Nope, votes on front of you. It's a trick. That carries. Okay. Moving on to reports. No community affairs and planning. Moving on to General Government Committee. 8.2.1 General Government Committee, September 11, 2023. Moved by Councillor Lee, second by Councillor Dies, that the General Government Committee report dated September 11, 2023 be adopted. Councillor Lee, you wish to speak to this?
Thank you, Chair. And I apologize to my council colleagues. I was dreadfully sick that day, so unable to attend. I just have some questions about the user fees before we approve this GGC report. I'm not sure who it would go to, but I actually think it's actually Director Meredith. Our benches and tree dedication, we saw an increase, I think it's like 3% Is there a waiting list? I thought I was under the impression they're in high demand and there's actually a waiting list for these services.
With respect to the bench dedication program, we've discontinued the bench dedications along our waterfront, but they do present opportunities in other parts of town. So we do work with those requests coming forward and try and accommodate requests in other locations in town. With respect to tree dedication, it is an active and a well-received program that through our environmental services, we do receive applications, and a couple times a year we do the actual tree planting. So those are something that we do budget for, and yes, they are quite popular.
So I guess my question is, this is very much an added benefit. I don't think the municipality is under any responsibility to guarantee this service to residents. And obviously it makes a lot of money. But to the point I'm asking is, can we not maybe making more money on this? Like for bench dedications, like I'm assuming on the waterfront, for example, it's capped out. There's no more room for any more benches?
That's correct. For several years, we have had a number of individuals where we've come to council before, this is a number of years ago, to stop the program along the waterfront. Not only is there sort of not a lot of capacity, these are also assets that, they're purchased initially, but they're assets that we are responsible to replace and maintain. So they do have a growing sort of asset impact on the town beyond the first acquisition. So we don't get the same demand in other locations in town, but this is a program that we've been pretty consistent in terms of how we've conveyed it to members of the public in the past.
But the tree dedication, for example, you said there's still kind of demand for it. If we were to I know I'm asking you to use your personal kind of judgment. If we were to increase that by $300, right, we'll call it 10%, do you think that would completely obliterate demand, or do you think people are willing to pay that? I think to a degree, this council, we're trying to find, non-tax revenue. And I think like there's a free market for trees where I think we could be making some money on this. And I think we're leaving money at the table. So I'm just like, from your expertise, if we were to increase the money by 10%, do you think we would see a 12% drop in the amount of people getting trees?
It's hard to say specifically. I would argue that our cost and our budgeting is based on cost recovery. So the cost of the trees plus the cost of planting are two separate contracts that we have with various suppliers and vendors. So we don't envision this a program that we've been trying to generate revenue from. We try and make it cost neutral. So that's been our historic approach as it relates to this program.
So this obviously passed the GDC. I just would like to point out to, I guess, the mayor, who's our budget chair this year, I think there's a huge opportunity to capitalize on market conditions and to make some money off this, or at least more money than we're making now. My next question, I guess, would be to the director of rec. Our non-resident fees, whether it's Commissioner of Oath to rent the cricket pitch, for example, it only kind of went up, I think, around 3.19%, right? Same question to you. If we were to jack that up by 10%, would we lose money because non-residents would be like, oh, it's now too expensive to do business in Ajax, in your expertise?
Through the chair to Regional Councillor Lee, a bit of a difficult thing to accurately predict. I will say that the non-resident fee is fairly new. We just introduced that within the last 2 years. We still continue to see strong uptake within our facility rentals, both from Ajax residents and non-Ajax residents. So there could be capacity to potentially increase that, but again, it's tough to say with full accuracy.
So this one might be a bit easier. If I were to do this one on the floor and just make a blanket amendment asking for non-resident rentals go up 5% as opposed to 3.19 or 3.15, that could be done rather easily, I'm assuming, correct? Because it's just like a direct increase.
Sorry, to clarify, in terms of done easily, you mean implemented
Correct.
easily?
Because right now we have it at 3.19, so I'm just like, in sense, changing position, we have to kind of change those numbers a bit. But that could be done, correct?
That's correct. It would be a matter of updating the fee as we update the fees normally.
Because quite frankly, like I get, the increases for residents, and you had to manage those, but I don't care about non-residents who are renting our facilities. And I think there's still a demand. And again, we could still be making more money off these individuals. So Chair, I'd like to make an amendment to increase all non-resident.
Sorry, Councillor Lee, tell me quickly what the item is in GGC so I can document it.
Geez, thank you. Yes. GGC, it is, sorry, going back up, FIN dash 2023-22, 2024 user fees and changes. My amendment on these changes is for non-resident fees to go up, to change the base rate by 5% across the board. Specifically, again, non-resident. The tree thing, I think I want to look at like down the line. I think there's a huge opportunity there as well, especially if there's a demand. We don't owe non-residents anything, but we owe residents everything. And in light of all these continued budgetary pressures we have, this is a great way for us to kind of make up that gap. And I'd appreciate a seconder. I guess I need a seconder for this, correct? So whoever,
Moved by
and then
Councillor I saw Councillor Henry second.
appreciate any kind of support on that. Thank you.
Okay, we have amendment on the floor, user fees for non-residents to go from, is it 3.1?
It changes per thing, so I just want a blanket increase to 5% increase.
Okay, I believe 3.1 is the MPI, correct?
Some that were 3.19, some that were 3.18.
To the chair, 3.15 was the MPI.
3.15 is the MPI. So instead of using the MPI for non-resident, any user fees for any non-resident instead of MPI to 5%.
Yes, please.
Questions, comments on the amendment? Councillor Dice.
Thank you.
There you go.
I have a question to our Director of Recreation. I believe there are other municipalities as well that have non-resident user fees. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Regional Councillor Dyes, yes, that is correct. And that was one of the basis for which we introduced the non-resident fees for Ajax.
So are we kind of in line with the other municipalities on that as well? Because we keep track, obviously, when we increase our fees.
Yeah, for the most part, we're relatively in line. I will just say when we're comparing rates for facility rentals, it's not quite an apples to apples comparison, say as where you take a sheet of ice at one municipality compared to one somewhere else. Rooms have different sizes, different assets, different costs as well. So certainly we're in line, but again, not an apples to apples piece on that one.
So do residents get priority when you're programming spaces that are available? Or is it first come, first served kind of thing?
Just to clarify, do you mean for facility rentals?
So in other words, if we're going to, increase the cost for, non-residents, that means then you're going to have fewer people, I guess, step up to the plate. Do we prioritize in any way and differentiate between a resident when we're filling programs?
For filling programs, like recreational programs.
Yeah.
We implemented last year a new process where Ajax residents have time in advance to register for programs prior to non-residents opening up. So yes, that is correct. If we're talking about facility booking, like rental of spaces in HMS from Rotary, for example, no, we don't have that priority process in place at this time.
I'm thinking more programs, so really there's availability there for people out of district, so to speak, to be able to come here. I know personally that I've taken programs in other municipalities for whatever reasons. And I think that it's a way of doing business, but I think if you're going to outprice everybody else, you tend to get your name dragged in the mud kind of thing. You have to be careful of how you do that, because you still want to be open and friendly to people who want to do business here. Thank you.
Okay, Director Cooper, I think you would want a clarification.
Yes, thank you. Just looking for a clarification from the mover. We do have at least one, possibly more non-resident fees outside of the Recreation Division. I just wanted to ask if your motion was specific to recreation or across the board.
I think it's an opportunity for the town to look across the board, but that said, the intent of this motion is specifically for recreation.
Okay, thank you.
And then, Chair, with the seconder's permission, if we can get some sort of year-over-year report this time next year, again, if we lose money off this, then I'm willing to, eat crow and say that this wasn't worth it. Let's go back to the old way. But I have a sneaking suspicion we have an opportunity here.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
CEO Baker?
I'm very nervous about making a change like this without us doing some analysis and coming back and giving you a report as to what. There are a number of different things that we charge non-residents for, including things like ice, and we make quite a good bit of revenue off of that. So I wouldn't want us to be in a position of losing money without first being able to give you some analysis. Would it be, what I'm suggesting is that the report be approved as it is, and then we can do the analysis, bring it back at budget, and present to you what we recommend might be something that.
That works for me. I just, it's not the first time I brought this up to Director Vita, but I think it's time that we, for non-residents, remain competitive, but at the same time, we can make up some budget shortfalls. So I am, with the Senator's permission, comfortable waiting for a budget and a report to come for that.
Okay, so are you withdrawing your amendment?
I guess I am. Thank you.
After all that rating I did? Anything further on the GGC from September 11th? Nope. Open the vote, please. That carries. Summary of Advisory Committee reports, moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Henry, that the summary of Advisory Committee activity reports dated September 18, 2023, as attached to the meeting agenda, be received for information, and that the recommendations contained therein be referred to staff where applicable. Questions on Advisory Committee reports? Nope. Vote, please. That carries. Moving on to departmental reports, 8.4.1, the CAO 2023-15 Social Media Policy 55 update. Moved by Councillor Tyler Moore and second by Councillor Lee, that the proposed update to Social Media Policy 055, Attachment 1 of the addition of Section 3.3, Management and Administration, Councilmember accounts be approved. Questions or comments? Councillor Henry. Press your button, please. There you go. There you go.
Thank you. So questions with regards to this, I've had some time to look it over. And with regards to those of us that have pages, and I have had some meetings with Devin Jarvis with regards to this, because it is different for a page than that of a counselor that holds an account itself, and the limitations are different. I just want to make sure that by doing this, we're not limiting any of the, well, there's a few things. Number one, I'd like to ask, when it refers to the public and not blocking the public in general, is the public at large, or is the public for that of our ward, our voting ward? specific language around that.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Henry, thank you for that question. I would interpret this as townwide, not ward specific. However, looking through the guidance of the policy and also the guidance of the Integrity Commissioner's comments that are attached to this report as well, if you do have very specific questions or concerns regarding blocking of certain users, that is a severe moderation tool, and I would recommend to seek the advice of the Integrity Commissioner directly.
Thank you. And I suppose that you would give me the same advice with regards to blocking members of public from other municipalities, should that be an issue.
Through the chair to Councillor Henry, I don't believe it would be appropriate for me to speak on behalf of other municipalities in that manner. I do think that specific blocking question more broadly outside of Ajax, I think would be a good one to seek the advice of the Integrity Commissioner, again, directly on.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I would just like to say that should this move forward, that would mean that when we are tagging each other in posts, that would mean we'd have to make sure that we're tagging the right accounts. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to respond if our private accounts, as Deputy Mayor Crawford and I often get tagged our private accounts instead of our page accounts. So we'd have to be very cautious to make sure that all members of council and our teams are tagging the correct accounts moving forward.
Or
Thank you.
just don't respond to any town business on your personal account.
Response, no, Mayor, but I'm referring to when we're tagging for events, for each other, I mean, not for others from the public.
Anything further on
Thank you.
the social media policy? Seeing none, please open the vote. That is carried. Next item, under departmental reports, 8.4.2, Ajax Fire Emergency Services 2023-06 Contract Award Replacement Aerial Fire Apparatus Unit A42 2006. Moved by Councillor Dye, second by Councillor Bauer. The council award the contract for the supply and delivery of an aerial fire apparatus to commercial emergency equipment in the amount of $2.316,500, inclusive of all taxes. The council provide pre-budget approval in the amount of $1.576 million and $80 funded from the vehicle and equipment reserve. Anybody want to speak to this before I do have an amendment? Okay, I have an amendment I provided to the clerk. Moved by myself. I do need a seconder. I'll just read it quickly. Second by Councillor Tyler Morin. Oh, I can't read it now. The council award the contract for the supply and delivery of aerial fire apparatus to commercial emergency equipment in the amount of $2, as I said, inclusive. Item 2 is changed to remove funded from the vehicle and equipment reserve and that the full project amount be financed from debenture financing. And item 3, the council approve an exemption to policy 124 debt management to permit the use of debt for the purchase of the aerial fire apparatus. And I'll just speak to it quickly. This, and you'll see the next item on departmental reports, is utilizing debentures for capital projects. So you're all aware of my push to start taking assets that have a longer useful life than 10 years and stop paying cash for them to start debenturing those, so we're not depleting our reserves up front, that we're spreading those payments out. At the same time, vehicles are depreciating assets. So buying this cash up front, it immediately is worth less the next day. To me, financially, that doesn't make sense. At the same time, we've been looking with the debenturing. This report is the next report received for information. That's fine. I'm fine with it being received for information, but I will be bringing this back with a bit more direction after the fact. So I don't know if we want to look at this as a test case or a pilot in this case, but I understand this is time sensitive. Is that accurate? Fire representative, yeah, I'm getting a nod. So I don't want to hold this up, but at the same time, I don't want to lop $1.576 million out of our capital vehicle reserve when we are going through this other process. So I would ask staff support or council support on this. And item 3, that council approve an exemption from policy 124, our purchasing bylaw has a provision in it which forbids us from using debt financing for vehicles. I'm sure that's something that when the financial sustainability plan was developed 15 years or so ago, again, was very relevant at the time, but times have changed. We're now in times when we have incredible pressures on our capital projects. Everything that we have coming to the table now, whether it be roads or everything else, is sometimes double or more in price. We really need to be looking at ways to make our reserves work better for us. And to me, that's not in a depreciating asset. So I would ask for your support on this on a one-time basis, and I'll be bringing back the debenture as well as looking at the investment strategy at a later time. Thank you. On the speaker list, Councillor Tyler Moore.
Thank you, Your Worship, and very happy to support this amendment. I think it's important. This evening we heard from Councillor Lee that we get creative any single way we can to help with our costs, with our inflationary challenges that we have. So I want the members of the public to know that we're not debating or compromising the replacement of the aerial fire apparatus. This is just a way of us to get creative financially. And so happy to support this and glad this is here.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. To the Director of Finance, would we kind of, in a sense, be able to use this as a test case to see in 3 months, 6 months, whether this was actually like a good policy? Like, would you be able to kind of game out if we had done A versus B and the result?
Through the chair, 3 months, 6 months, no.
Okay. It would be, in a sense, 1 year's.
It would be the length, the term of the debenture.
But you could, couldn't you do checks every 2 years to see at this point, if we had gone with capital financing versus debenture, this is where we would have been with our money?
Through the chair, not really. So when we take out a debenture or debenture financing, we will be locked into the rates that are prescribed at that time. The investments are depending on how the money is invested. If it is in a term certificate, then we would know what the interest rates are. But if it's in something like an equities market, we would not know. We would not be able to predict that. We would know at a point in time, but over the full length, we would only be able to determine that after the full length of the debenture.
And through the chair to yourself then, this is over how many years did you want to debenture this?
I would assume in this case that this would be probably for 15 because a fire truck has to be replaced, I believe, every 15 years. So the lifetime of it would be 15 years.
So really there's no way to use this as a test case?
We haven't got to that yet. It's
Okay.
just if we let this pass as is, we can't come back after the fact. So these are things that will be decided later on at the regional level because they're the ones that control the debenture finance.
Okay. Happy to support as a one-off then, especially, apparently you've kind of tipped that the next one will be received for information. And, I understand finance's hesitation, because of the uncertainty, but in this case, I think it's a relatively low risk for us to begin this kind of trial process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anything further by any members of council? Okay, hearing, seeing none, please open the vote on the amendment. Okay, the amendment passes. On the motion as amended, can we get the amended motion? Well, I guess that is the amended motion, is it not? Okay, on the motion as amended. Questions or comments? Hearing, seeing none, can we vote? Okay, that is carried. Moving on to the next item, utilizing debentures for capital projects, item 8.4.3. Moved by Councilor Bauer, second by Councilor Lee, that the report entitled Utilizing Debentures for Capital Projects be received for information. Questions or comments? Nope. Open the vote, please. Oh, that is carried. Final one, 8.4.4, Operations 2020-20 Snow Removal Program for Seniors and Qualified Residents. I am going to put myself as a mover since it's blank and seconded by Councillor Tyler Moran. And I do have an amendment for this that I'm just going to bring out because I don't see much point in having a discussion based on this. I don't think anybody is happy with what was in front of us, so. Sure. I just have a question before we go ahead. When I originally read this, it said the fee to be charged was $550, but it's showing up here as $408.
There were two options in the report. One was the 408, which was the recommended service delivery, which was the windrow, apron, and sidewalk. The 550 was the inclusion of the walkway to the front door, which was not recommended by staff.
It was not recommended by staff.
Correct.
So we received a number of supplementary, this is seconded by, I have Councillor Tyler Moran here. So we received a number of supplementary correspondence today, and I think this was based on a online post which quoted 550. So that's why I'm asking, because 550 is quoted in almost every single piece. So you're saying that 550 that was online is incorrect?
The 550 is for the service that staff are not recommending in the report.
Okay. I'll just like to speak to this very quickly, and then I'll turn it over to council on the amendment. I'm adding single car driveway, but it's actually not single car driveway. Director Meredith, you confirmed that the current practice is the entire driveway. Was that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so can we strike single car and just put the driveway, please, Mr. Clerk? When I asked for a review of the senior snow removal last year, it was very clear to me that residents expected a quicker process, and it wasn't even about price at the time. It's very, very, very reasonable at $190, but people were just frustrated with the time it took to, especially when you had back-to-back storms. With that direction, staff have done a great job going out, vetting a bunch of these things, but I don't think with what is presented here, we're quite there. I'm going by all the feedback that was received. It is actually in my opinion, reduction of service, taking away the driveway portion. I think that is the big piece. We've been doing it all the way through. I don't, I guess, support the argument that it's against our municipal insurance pool. I think we can make this work. So by adding in the driveway, I think that will satisfy most of the resident complaints that I've seen. That will keep the service level at the same level as we currently have. But by hiring the new people, we will be able to get this down. Now, what we had in front of us without the driveway was a 24-hour response. What we might get with this is it might be a little bit longer before they can respond, but I think this is still a reasonable compromise. And to the price, again, going from 190 to 408 in 1 year, more than double, I don't think is palatable to the residents, definitely not from those who I've heard. I think 300 is a compromise again. It's still a 50% increase, but it is a significant increase in service. Instead of being 48 plus hours, we're getting this done in just over, hopefully around 24, depending on the size of the storm. Nothing saying that we can't phase in the other portion at the next year. And I did have Director Meredith run the numbers, so I'll just speak to that quickly. Based on this, and please, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, the total cost of the program is about $220,000. Based on $300 and 400 homes, that's $120,000, which means the cost the town would absorb is $100,000. I think, even from a goodwill perspective, it's a big number, but it's small in a $139 million budget. I think that is something that we can do to assist the seniors that are going to be using this service. So I will leave it there and ask for your support. Councillor Tyler Moran, did you want to speak to this as a seconder?
Yes, if I may. Thank you so much. So as a local counselor, it's sort of the classic challenge that we have, and we get a lot of phone calls, as my regional counterparts do as well. So I never heard hardly anybody say that the price at $190 was necessarily the issue. The issue was the speed, as the mayor's already spoken about. The idea that now it's gone up for the same service, because we're essentially doing the same thing as we were doing before as far as clearance of the sidewalk, windrows, and the driveways and walkways. It's not really the same service, because this increase of $100-ish, $110, includes 8 new part-time staff members, which will speak to the challenge that most people spoke to us about, which was speed. So we're actually addressing an exact challenge by this amendment. So I'm happy to support, and really hoping that it's smoother and the residents are happier with the service. But yeah, it seems to be a good middle ground. Thank you.
And also 4 more trucks, so there is capital expense for the town. Next, Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. This might have been explained the first time you guys went through, but so just to elucidate again, how much would it be if we contracted snow removal similar to what Pickering does? Or is that just like not a non-starter for us? Because it's mentioned in the report that Pickering is able to reduce their costs because it's contracted. So what if we did the same?
Contracting is an option. It is something that we have explored in the past. We've had numerous challenges with the vendor that we've had, so similar to certain services that we've provided where you do have to commit to a standby rate. My guess is we would be in the $250,000 to $300,000 range if we were to contract it as a service. That's generally based on close to what Whitby is sort of paying, or sorry, Pickering is paying from a contracted service perspective. So clearly that is an option. It's, like I said, we've done it probably 2 to 3 times in the past, and we've been unsuccessful in terms of managing that contract. And the difficulty comes when we were in the middle of winter and we were having some contractor performance issues. We didn't have the staffing or resources to deliver the service. So then it did compound the problem because we weren't able to support the service when the contracted employees weren't delivering the service as required.
Is Pickering having these issues? Like in terms of just the feedback, if we, in a sense, we'd be using a similar contractor, are they kind of getting that feedback too of, oh, they're not doing it to that good standard? I mean, obviously I don't hear from Pickering residents, but maybe your counterpart at Pickering would have told you?
I'm not hearing of those customer service.
No. Just like whether they have the issues that we had the few times we did contract.
I'm not aware of the issues that Pickering, or if Pickering is having any issues as it relates to their contracted service.
It just seems, to the mover of the amendment, like a pretty logical step to just kind of emulate what Pickering is doing if there's kind of cost savings. But I do have a follow-up of just, in terms of our audit system, how robust is that, do we feel? Do we feel people are kind of getting in between the cracks? Some snowbirds are still putting themselves on the list even though they shouldn't be. People, calling a random doctor for a notice of, disability. Do we suspect there's a lot of that, or?
I wouldn't say that, not necessarily from a disability standpoint. We feel that the individuals that are on the list have the appropriate documentation, and when our staff are delivering the service, we feel it's legitimate. There is a reality that there are a number of snowbirds that do sign up for the service that do not live here through the winter. So that is something that we are aware of. It would be less than 10% of the total number, but it still is a number that we do identify with.
The reason I ask is, I mean, if we have faith in our audit system then, and if I'm not, the report said 55% of polled residents actually wouldn't mind a tiered system based on income. I understand maybe not for this winter cycle because it's so close to implement something like that, but for next year, is that something staff had considered, like a tiered system based on income? Because, there are a lot of seniors who are on disability or, set incomes, but there are also some seniors who could afford to pay more for the service. So I'm wondering if we ever considered a tiered system.
So a tiered system is a possibility. I know the city of Pickering, they have sort of 4 tiers, sort of under, I believe it's about 83,000, 83 to about 140 to 190, and over 190,000, you're not eligible for the service.
Right.
So that, and they've got 3 different pricing structures underneath that. So it is a possibility.
Okay. You know, to the mover of the amendment, I think these are all things that should be considered for next year. Obviously, what you're implying is this isn't really set, and there's obviously opportunities to improve. But I think there are certain parts of this survey that we should be paying heed to, like more than half of residents think that a tiered system would be fair. I think that's an opportunity for us, as well as possibly looking to contracted service like Pickering. But also, I'm hoping for a weaker snow event this year. Anyways. Thank you to the Director of Operations. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Henry, you are next.
Thank you. So I'd like to echo everything Regional Councillor Lee said. I support everything that he said there, but I would like to ask some questions of the director. So with regards to the contracted service you spoke of, was that specifically for seniors in the past, or was that, are you referring to contracted snow removal in general?
Specific for seniors.
Specific for seniors. Okay. And through the report that was not recommended in the 2 scenarios, the second scenario, which was the $550, that was for the windrow, the municipal sidewalk, the driveway apron, and the path to the front door. So the only thing that was missing from my understanding from that service and the service that seniors and accessible persons with accessible needs currently have that they're paying $190.41 for is the driveway. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So at this time, I would like to make an amendment to the amendment, and I believe I have a seconder on this. And the amendment proposed by Mayor Collier further be amendment to deliver at a price of $225.
Do you have a second? Second by Councillor Dies. So you want to amend the amendment to, you're fine with the amendment for item 1, adding driveway. Your amendment is just to change the 300 to 225.
Correct.
Plus HST.
Correct.
Okay, on the amendment to the amendment. Questions?
Can I speak to it?
Sure.
Thank you. So I've received numerous emails just by letting folks know that this was out there. I already knew how most folks in Ward 2 felt because I received a lot of emails last year to which I had to gauge them by as a new counselor and see if this was the norm or if this was excessive. And from what I'm seeing from Ward 2, they've spoken loud and clear, and they've told me they don't want to see an increase in price in this service at all, and that they feel that the taxes that they're paying are well more than enough, and the tax increase has been enough. And they're feeling the gouge, as a lot of people are at the grocery stores, just in general. So if you have a senior that owns their home that's mortgage-free, if they're lucky enough to be mortgage-free, and they're bringing in $1,500 a month, and they have at least $500 going towards their taxes in the town of Ajax, they're living off approximately $1,000 a month, and that's tight for a lot of seniors. We are trying to keep seniors in their homes for as long as possible and provide them services that they've had for over 20 years. I don't want to see that taken away, and I don't really want to see that price jacked up. I think we can find other ways to pay for that, and in my opinion, and if this doesn't go through, it doesn't go through, but I had to try, and in my opinion, $225 is a fair price. If you look at the tax increase we gave, which I believe was 4%, and the mayor can correct me if I'm wrong, in and around there, and you look at that 4% on 190, it's still under the 200. So, in speaking with Councillor Dies today, we come through with a compromise that we thought was fair to increase the service gently, softly, at $225, and we thought that was a fair compromise. So I'll pass it over to Councillor Dies. Thank you.
Councillor Dies, did you want to speak to this as a second? Okay, you have the floor.
You're on.
Sorry. I have a question, please, for Ms. Cruciano, who's an expert on our grants here at the town. I'm wondering if it's possible, because this is about keeping seniors in their homes longer. The province has continually suggested that that should be the case, that we can look after them in their homes. And quite frankly, there's nowhere else to downsize to here in Ajax. There's a list of over 8,000 people to go into not-for-profit housing, which is where our seniors' apartments are. So it's become a real problem. So I'm wondering if we could investigate perhaps augmenting that with a grant that would help offset the costs if we decrease the cost to the client,
I
the
don't
resident.
think that's really on the amendments.
Well, it's a question I have for Ms. Cruciano.
Okay, that might be the main motion, but okay, go ahead. That's some latitude. Ms. Cruciano, are you on the line?
Thank you very much to Regional Councillor Dyes for the question, and through the mayor to you. Looking for grants to offset the costs of initiatives done by the town is something that we're always looking into. And Regional Councillor Dyes is correct that the province does occasionally put out grants for seniors, which we explore on a regular basis. Given the, depending on the outcome of this evening's council meeting and the decision made by council on this, reviewing grant opportunities that come across our desk and that are made available to us, we will always be looking for opportunities to decrease the burden on the taxpayer and on the town's financial books in any way that we can. So we will explore this as an option, as we always do with opportunities to seek grants.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I think it benefits both, obviously, the town and the residents. And the reason I bring that up is I think that higher cost of clearing the driveway is something that residents who perhaps, as Councillor Henry spoke to, have disabilities or have challenges where they can't clear. Yes, we can do the windrow, we can do the bottom apron, but it doesn't help if they can't get out of their driveway. So for some, it's a real issue. They need to get out. Yes, there are different incomes for different levels, I get that. But if we give them that higher service level and decrease it by 50%, hopefully we can get some other funding from the province in order to support that. Because I think it's really very important. They're on fixed incomes. If you've lost a partner, then you're really struggling, and there is nowhere to go. We are having to stay in our homes longer and longer, and we're seeing that with our residents. So I think we need to support them in different ways and find different ways to find that revenue. Thank you.
Next, Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Since Ms. Cruciano is on there anyways, has there ever been an instance where people put advertisements on their snow trucks?
We're way off the amendment.
But I'm just like, you were talking about cost savings and costs making up the difference. I just think there's, I'm full of great ideas today. Fair enough. I just wanted to bring that up, and perhaps you can look into it. Thank you, Chair.
Out of order. I will point out Pickering doesn't do the driveway either, so it's not a fair comparison. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Mayor Collier. So I think doing the math on this amount, so for the mayor's $300, it ended up being the town would absorb a cost of roughly $100,000. So this math, the town would absorb roughly $130,000. So, it's not that much more of a cost when we look at the service we're providing. I really agree and acknowledge the points that Councillor Henry and Regional Councillor Dyes have made, specifically that we heard from the seniors in our wards that they're trying to get this service and they can't afford a lot of increases. This would just be one increase amongst many others that are happening, not just to seniors but to everybody. So I think $225 is reasonable, and that would be great if there was a way to recover that through grants, advertising, or other creative ideas. So I'm okay to support this motion and the amendment, and I thank you for bringing it forward. Thank you.
Counselor Crawford, you're next.
Thank you. Through you to Director Meredith. Whether it's 300 or whether it's 225, how does this affect service? Does it affect it obviously we're down 200, roughly 275 if we go with 225. So that has to affect something in the level of service. And my hope is that it's not timing.
It is time.
Because timing is the critical piece in this. Yeah, I get, so I just need to understand because I think it's, the price is the price, whatever the price is chosen, but then the expectation can't be that it's within, whatever, 24 hours of a snowfall, if that's not a reasonable expectation.
Through the chair to Regional Councillor Crawford. So the staff recommendation was based on a full cost recovery, and that's sort of the general premise behind it. You're right, whether it's 225, whether it's 300, whether it's $350, we're going to deliver the service that council expects us to deliver. The cost, and I do want to point out, there is a difference between the amendment that's been made versus what is in the report. So the recommendation for the 8 staff was based on driveway, apron, sidewalk, and windrow. Right, the service level 2 added which was the $550, was based on an addition including the apron. Now we're being asked to do the driveway, which wasn't contemplated in either one of those two. So whereas we had 8 staff versus 12 staff, now we're probably talking about 16 staff in order to do a 24-hour service delivery to do the full-blown service that is required.
So possibly the cost is more than 130?
Well, the cost would be more than the $550. Generally, you add a crew of 4, it's about $32,000 to $33,000 plus 2 vehicles, so they're about $100,000 a vehicle. So, so that's one thing in terms of the service delivery. I do want to speak that once we start to get to 16 staff that we're looking for supporting this program, recruiting is going to be a challenge. It's easy to say that, hire 16 staff. At this point in time, we tap into our pool of part-time staff, generally from our seasonal staff. They're generally the ones that support this service. We do a posting each year to have those seasonal employees express their interest in being part of the senior snow removal program. Right now, we have 7 seasonals that have signed up. So that's the pool that we're starting with. And if we're trying to deliver this service, which is based on 12, 14, 16, plus the 6 that we currently have, we're going to need probably another 12 to 14 staff that we'll have to recruit outside of our current resources to try and fill and support. So I do have some concerns about being able to fill those positions. The other consideration that I would like council to think about is we're trying to price these all within sort of a single shift, which is essentially a 12-hour shift or a 24-hour period. If the service delivery was 36 hours, that gives us 2 full shifts. So essentially, the staff would work a 12-hour shift, they'd have 12 hours off, so they'd say 8 to 8, they'd go home from 8 to 8, then they'd be back 8 to 8. So you'd have 2 full days to deliver the service, and that would change things and keep the number of staffing that we need more manageable. So those are just a couple of comments that I didn't want missing from this conversation this evening.
And important pieces, because I think it's important that that the expectation, then if the price goes down, perhaps the expectation of completion or starting goes up. That's what we're trying to say here, right? So you're saying it would be 36 hours before completion of clearing what we've asked here, as opposed to 24.
Yes, if
At
we're
125.
If we were sticking with the 8 staff persons plus the existing 6, that's that would be 14 staff. That's 7 crews to do over 2 shifts. I think would be manageable, but we wouldn't be able to achieve it within a 24-hour period.
Okay. To the grant, I don't know if Ms. Cruciano is still on here. Would we be able to get a grant for operating, like?
Sorry, we're
Okay, never mind.
not talking about grants.
Okay, never mind. Okay, so Okay, so just as long as we understand that by lowering the price, we raise the time, that's all. Because I just don't want seniors to think that a lower price still means a 24-hour turnaround, if that's not possible. So,
I see a number of people wanting to get back in, and I haven't spoken yet, so I'm going to speak on this now. As the mover, the original.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think I just want to make it clear that lowering the price is not impacting the service. What's impacting the service is the addition of the driveway. That's what's impacting the timeline.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. Yeah, the cost is not 408. The cost is 550. Okay, I pay 700. That's the real cost to get this done if you had it done by a private contractor. And that's actually somebody I know that has done mine for a long time. It's actually higher if you were to go out to the public. So by adding the driveway, we've gone automatically from 408 to 550. Just to be clear. When I brought forward 300, I understand. That was the other, so the 408 didn't include the driveway. The 550 includes the driveway. No?
No, just the driveway apron. There's no driveway.
Okay. So we just, and Councilor Lee brought up before about increasing for non-residents with the MPI. These are things that would normally ratchet these things up. But this is not just a standard. This is a significant increase in level of service. Significant. And now, I mean, I understand it's going to take a little bit longer by adding the driveway, but I don't think anything less would be acceptable to the residents. So I believe we have to do that. The price I proposed at 300 was something, after getting the numbers, was sort of a reasonable split the difference. If we were to go with 225, we're basically downloading almost all of this onto all the residents of the town of Ajax. So we're basically, all the residents of the town of Ajax are subsidizing the seniors nearly 100% by only going up just a small amount on this. That's not something I can support. The 300 was a number sort of splitting the difference a little bit, sort of a phasing in, more reflective of the true cost, but really not really. It's still at least a 40% discounted amount to that, which is pretty reasonable. 225 is half, 50%. I don't think that's reasonable. I mean, it's a good number. I mean, it might be popular, but I don't think that is what we're here to do today. We've talked about the cost pressures we have on other things. I can tell you at a budget meeting this afternoon, you're not going to like the number. So anything that we're adding here is just adding to that. So I just want council to be aware that it's not about just trying to please the couple of people we've talked to and whatever. This is about something that is a much bigger picture. Most people don't even know about the snow removal process. We have 400 out of 36,000 homes. It's not something a lot of people are talking about. We just need to be careful with that. So I just want to say that's why I brought forward that number. That's the number I can support. I can't support 225. But this isn't significant increase in service, whether it's 24 hours, 30 hours, still is. And Councilor Lee, I think you said we can always look at this next year, which is exactly what I would want to do, is revisit this after we've done this for this winter, see where we're at and see what changes we can make. And yeah, if it is something that we can do afterwards, great. But I think right now to go ahead and take that much of a step is too much. Next I have Councilor Bauer, you've spoken. Councilor Henry, spoken. Councilor Tyler Moore, have you spoken on the amendment to the amendment? I have not. Okay, you are up.
I think I have. Thank you, and appreciate everyone's patience. So just so I get this straight. So the original motion was that it was full cost recovery at 550 without doing the driveway. Correct? Through the mayor? Is that correct?
That was the one option that was presented in the
Okay.
report, yes.
So if we wanted to include the driveway, which clearly we do, so that would be cost. So then we said, okay, we will drop that either from 408 or actually, we were actually dropping it from 550 based on the ask to $300. And at that point, we thought it would be about $100,000 for the rest of the, for the taxpayers, like an extra budget item to compensate, to get it back up. But that's not really accurate. Even at $300, it's not an extra $100,000 that we have to absorb as taxpayers. It's actually more, correct? It's probably $200,000-ish.
It would be closer to 100 than 200. I think the $120,000 we would get in revenue at 300 versus the total cost of the program is 220 plus. If we're going to do the full driveway, it probably adds another $20,000 to $30,000, so we're probably 250. So the net impact's probably about 130.
Okay. And then if we go with this amendment to the amendment, that 130 then would look closer to 180?
Well, 300 to 200 is a third, so
Okay.
it gets close to 200.
It's close to 200. So it's almost double the amount we have to absorb if we go with this. So anyways, I can't support the amendment to the amendment because already, like I say, 34,000 homes are paying for 400 very important people that need help, and we'll do everything we can, but trying to hit sort of a middle ground here so that the service level, just to repeat, will be much higher. We're hiring 8, I hear 12, I hear 16. We're bringing in 4 new trucks, all for that extra $100 from what we paid last year. And God willing, much faster service. Thank you.
Councillor Tyler, or Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Mayor Collier. So if I remember correctly, there was pilot volunteer programs for shoveling for seniors. Is that going to continue happening, and is there a way to use that resource coupled with a new seniors program?
Through the chair to Councillor Bauer, the volunteer program did not run last year. It did run 2 seasons ago. We had a limited number of volunteers that signed up for that program. The call that we put out last year did not elicit many at all volunteers, so unfortunately we didn't have a volunteer base to actually deliver that program, and therefore we weren't able to implement.
Okay. And are you planning to call for volunteers again this year?
At this time, we have no intention to put out that call again, no.
Okay. And just to confirm, so the $190.41 that was currently being charged covers the items that we're offering now in the new motion, but the completion time, we aim for 24. It starts 24 hours after the snow stops, and it takes currently up to how long to complete?
We're generally well into our 4th day.
Into 4 days, okay. And what we're trying to do by increasing staff is 24 hours after the snow stops, complete it in 24 hours or possibly 36.
The desire when we went into this was to cost it within a 24-hour period. Having gone through the exercise, my preference would be for council to adopt a 36-hour level of service response time to deal with this, primarily based on concerns I have in terms of the ability to have the resources hired and the consistency with turnovers and that we know are going to happen during the course of the year. That if we've got we'd manage it sort of in that 8 to 10 staff range of additional staff to deliver it within 2 full shifts, which would be a 36-hour period.
So regardless of 300 or 225, we still may not be able to provide that service of 24 hours. We're hoping for 36. We're aiming for 36 or less.
I believe that
Is
we're
that what
aiming
you
for
said?
36 or less. We would need at least 16 additional staff, which would be 8 vehicles then, because they're in groups of 2. So it is starting to get to the point, because when you're doing the full driveway and everything else that we've asked for, you do 2 to 2.5 in an hour, right? And you got travel time, you're loading and unloading equipment, blowers and so forth. It takes time for staff to get through that volume. So I do think the second shift or the second day would be more realistic in terms of an expectation. I'm trying to manage expectations
Sure.
of the community and the residents that sign up for this program, and I think we all want to be able to deliver the program as we say. So that would be my recommendation, is that we move to that 36-hour time period.
Okay.
Based on the recommendation that staff have presented today.
Right. Okay. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Councillor Henry.
Through the chair, so Director Meredith, sorry, backtrack a bit right now. Currently, we're offering the service at 190.41, and the expectation is 24 hours after snow has dropped, we start the service. And currently, right now, from my recollection of my first term here in the winter, was we were providing that service within a 36-hour period. And is that already the council expectation that is already stated in the policy or the bylaw or whatnot? Is that what's already there, the 36-hour period currently?
We don't have a 36-hour period currently. What we do is we commit to initiate the program 24 hours after the snow has stopped falling, once the plows have completed their routes.
To initiate?
To initiate, and then roughly we're taking up to 4 days right now to complete that work.
So we have no timeline currently in the senior snow removal program upon completion. We only have a timeline for initiation, correct?
Correct.
And that's at $190.
Correct.
And then the staff report that was brought forward moved it up to $550, taking out the driveway, almost doubling the price without the driveway. So the $190.41, how much of that was subsidized by the
Councillor
current
Henry?
taxpayer?
Councillor Henry.
Yes, sir.
The amendment to the amendment is changing from $300 to $225. So your questions are on the amendment to the amendment, changing $300 to $225, not on the time and response and all this. I've given a lot of latitude to everybody, but right now we're on the amendment to the amendment, which is reducing 300 to 225. So you can ask your other questions after, but right now that's where your questions have to be on, please.
Will you give me some leeway with regards to, and I understand and I respect your decision.
I will, but not the route you're going down right now. You get it?
Okay, so, no, understood. Let me rephrase it a bit then. So at 225, this amendment, regardless, the service will start at the 24-hour mark, as was previous. And there was no direction before and when it will be completed. You're asking us to include a direction now for a 36-hour completion, correct?
No.
Is that what you're asking of us?
That is what I've just indicated in terms of a service delivery with the 8 additional staff that are being recommended in the report.
Because in the report itself is very different from either one of our amendments as far as service level, correct?
Correct. The recommendations and the approach that was taken in the report was based on a 24-hour, sort of having the work completed within one shift.
In the report,
Correct.
but not as currently as the service is.
Not with the amendments.
Sorry, you're right, I'm sorry.
No. What I'm saying is 24 hours was based on no amendments. With the amendments we're making, Director Meredith is saying we're now probably at 36.
Which is what we're currently at with the current service level.
No. No, but again.
48, okay.
No, 4 days. 96.
48, okay. Thank you. Okay.
I don't have any further speakers. I have just a question on the recommendation. So regardless of whether this ends up being 225 or 300 or 408, whatever, I just realized item 2, Mr. Meredith, you've been talking about now needing 12 or whatever else. We're only authorizing 8 part-time staff and 4 vehicles.
Well, once we've settled on sort of what the service is that we're going to be delivering in the timeframes, then that will directly relate to the number of staff. So yes, the 8 staff that are being recommended was the driveway apron, the sidewalk, and the windrow within a 24-hour period. That's what the 8 staff are based on.
Okay. All right, let me get back to the amendment, Any further questions on the amendment to the amendment? And then we can get into the other questions about timing. If there's nothing further on the amendment to the amendment, I suppose we should vote, please. Okay, that fails. Now on to the amendment, which is, so this did not pass, that was a 3-4. Now on the amendment, which is to add in the driveway and to change the price to 300 from 408. Nobody's on the speaker list, so I'm gonna ask a couple of questions, I know, but. Councillor Crawford.
So in this amendment, we do not have hours.
Correct.
So I want to know what a senior can expect if they pay $300, they get their driveway, they get windrow, they get sidewalk, in what time frame?
Sort of the way that it's written here in this report. So our report and the recommendation that staff have presented was the windrow, the driveway apron, and the sidewalk.
Right, right. But this amendment, if it passes, so it now includes a driveway.
Yep.
It's roughly $150 cheaper. No. Well, let's just for numbers say $200 cheaper. How much that has to affect your time of 24 hours, right?
Just for clarification, I don't see whether it includes the walkway to the door.
Oh, yeah. Does it? I can't see the actual
I know, it's
report
cut
because
off a bit.
pictures are all there, so I can't actually.
As a mover, I can say that was the intent.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
So basically the same service we have now.
It is the same service we have now,
Right,
correct?
right.
The difference.
So, okay, so my question is, the report that you gave was 24 hours base. That will change with this recommendation or this amendment if it passes, correct? I need to know what that means.
So the aid staff will need to increase based on this report. So to go to what has been recommended in terms of including the driveway and the walkway to the front door, we're probably doubling the time that we need to take in a particular house. So we'd be going from 8 to 16 in terms of what the staff request would be.
And that gets us to what, 36 hours or 24?
We would still strive for that within a 24-hour period. If it was a 36-hour period, but I qualify the 16 just by what I've mentioned already in terms of our ability to have those bodies sort of in seats and actually delivering the service. I do think that is that's a real issue and concern that we have. If we were to extend it to a 36-hour window, I'd double check with staff, but we'd be between 8 and 12 staff in terms of what we would need in order to do a 36-hour delivery of the program as being presented.
Which is a huge improvement over the 4 days,
Correct.
right?
It's about half of what we it's essentially half of what we would currently deliver it.
Right, okay, thank you.
all right, I am gonna speak to this now, and then I'll get to the speakers list. Just to be clear, what's in front of us, and correct me if I'm wrong, is what it would take to bring us up from 4 days to hopefully 24 hours if we approved what was in front of us as is.
That's correct.
Okay, but by adding the walkway, the path to the door and the driveway, the price is irrelevant. By adding those, we're bumping us from 24 to probably 36 hours based on 8 people and 4 trucks as current.
That's correct.
Okay. I don't think that we should be getting tonight into the time frame because I don't want to on the floor be making up, maybe we need 12, maybe we need 16. I understand. Okay, I'm not debating this right now. Well, so what I'm saying, we've got 8 here. Is this, so when you say 12 or 14, is that including the 6 we already budget for?
We have 6, these are additional staff.
Right. So with the 6 we already have and these eight additional, that's 14.
Correct.
You're saying we would need more than that.
If we're to deliver this program within a 24-hour period, yes.
So we have a couple of decisions here. One, I think we can all agree with the amendment as far as the driveway and the price. I'm guessing. Why don't we move ahead with those? And then we'll look at item 2, which is the staff hire, and talk about time frame. I'm just trying to move things along. Well, if we vote on the amendment, which I think will probably carry, because I think we all want the driveway and the walkway in, that's that. And then we can talk about time frame. If we want to go to the 24-hour, then we can look at changing item 2 from 8 to 12. It does, but again, that's really not what we're talking about here right now, is the cost. We're talking about the response time. I'm happy with 36 hours because I think 36 hours is a significant improvement over 96. Fine, but I'm just trying to make a suggestion and try and move us forward. So I'll go to the speakers list now, but that would be my recommendation, is we get this amendment out of the way, because it's separate from what I think everybody else wants to talk about, which is the time. Pardon? Let's get to that after. Okay, Councillor Henry, on the amendment.
On the amendment. So I'm just clarifying, because there's been a lot of talk about these amendments.
So we're not on time for clear in 2436. We're on adding driveway and the path to the door and $300.
I'm just trying to justify, and I respect what you're saying to try to simplify it, but I am trying to justify for the folks that are already receiving this service an extra $109.59 increase, even with your amendment. What are they getting for that if we're not talking about time right now? What are they getting? Because they already had the driveway. Now you've thrown the driveway back in, which is great. It should have never come out, in my opinion. What are they getting for that extra $109?
Are you asking me or are you asking staff?
Anyone who can answer
Okay,
that
Director
question.
Meredith?
Essentially, you're getting the service delivered in half the time.
Or a quarter of the time?
And that's a guarantee.
If we're basing it on the 36 hours where we're taking 4 days now, we're basically going from 4 days to 2 days.
Okay. That's my question.
Perfect. Oh, there's no more speakers on the speaker list. Okay, on the amendments. I don't see anything else in the speaker list, so can we vote on the amendment? We're voting on the amendment. We're amending recommendations 1 and 4. Okay, that carries. Now, everybody, before we get on to the motion as amended, I'm gonna ask a couple of questions, see if I can't help move things along and get staff home before midnight. Mr. Meredith, in order for us to move this service from 36 hours to 24 hours, how many staff would you need? We're talking about item 2. Currently, you're asking for 8 with 4 vehicles. What would you need to make this 24 hours?
If from the time it stops snowing to have it completed within 24 hours, it would need to go to 16.
So you would need twice as many.
Because like I said, we're doing the math. When we're doing a full service right now, we're probably about 2.5 in an hour that they would get to. So when you factor in and you do the math and try and get it done within one shift, it works out to be about 16 staff.
Okay. So, and that's not including the 6 we already have, so you would need 22 total and 11 vehicles.
Correct.
Okay. Now, the cost on that, can I assume, doubles to $1,100 per 400 times 400?
You essentially would add to service level 2 where we had 12, yes, it doubles.
It doubles. So we're no longer $550 per person, we're now $1,100 per person. which means we're transferring $800 onto the taxpayer for every person receiving this service. So that's the impact of going from 36 hours to 24 hours. I'm opening it up if anybody wishes to make that amendment. I will not. Councillor Henry,
Can I ask a question?
go ahead.
So
This
now
is on the main motion. You can ask all the questions you want
on the main motion.
on the main motion as amended.
So I can't ask.
Don't make me regret saying that.
So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to want to ask, and you can tell me if I can ask it. Because I want to try to find out on the 190, how much of that was being subsidized? What was that amount? It kind of figures into this.
Okay, fair question. Was the 190 a full cost recovery, or how much of that was being supplemented?
It was being premised based on a full cost recovery. So when we had the 6 staff and the 190, there was a direct give or take, but generally it was a full cost recovery of the 6 staff versus the service that was delivered.
So 190, full staff recovery, staff or cost recovery in total?
Cost recovery.
Cost recovery of 48 hours. 96 hours. Now we're moving to $109 more, and you're saying that it will cost how much more for the taxpayer when they weren't?
But we're also factoring the $800,000 of additional vehicle costs that we need as well. So we depreciate that as part of the overall cost. It's not just staff.
So can we not look at this as a contracted out service at this time, knowing that information?
Not now. What's in front of us is this motion as amended.
Okay, I have no more questions, then I'm good.
Anything further on the motion as amended? Okay, let's vote quick. We're voting on what's in front of us. Okay, that passes. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to regional council reports. Regional council report, Councillor Crawford. Nope, we're almost done. You want me to do everything?
Yes, please. My report is in the package. I actually got it written. If there's any questions on it, I'm happy to answer. The only thing I would add is that Transit now, the Presto, you can now tap with your debit card. I tried it for the first time. You have to really remember to tap off, otherwise you get charged to Hamilton or to wherever. And some errors happened, and I just wanted to say I know I beat Metrolinx up quite a bit. I called right away to the Presto. They adjusted those prices right away. So kudos to them on their customer service. But anyway, that my report's there. If there's any questions.
Thank you. I just wanted to briefly, I'll be quick, talk about the homelessness presentation that was at the Committee of the Whole last week, where the region's lawyer spoke to the Ontario Human Rights Code and Canadian Charter of Rights, and specifically said that planning does not include decisions about types of people. And today planning must be practiced so that it is consistent with the Ontario Human Rights Code and Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So that, what he's saying is the code prohibits discrimination in housing with respect to race, religion, sexual orientation, family status, disability, or receipt of public assistance. And it's constitutional, it's over provincial and municipal powers, and councillors, such as ourselves, are bound by the code and can be found in violation of the code. So they had a quote in there that said opposition to housing projects based on stereotypes or prejudice towards the people who will live in them can be a violation of people's rights to be free from discrimination in housing, which means it can be against the law. So, and just wanted to give an overview that very quickly, over 650 units of affordable housing projects are under development in Durham. The one in Beaverton is supportive housing for homelessness with 47 units of transitional housing. The Ritson Road Schoolhouse in Oshawa is going through a conceptual plan for intensification, so being able to incorporate more apartments and more people on that land. The Durham Regional Housing Corporation has 2 sites in Oshawa going through the same intensification and community engagement. The home improvement or incentive program is also a program providing capital grants to eligible residential housing developments, and that's kickstarting some developments in housing as well. And in addition to that, the region continues to partner and invest in existing community housing stock and in transitional housing opportunities in 2 sites in Oshawa. The region just purchased the Sunnycrest Nursing Home, which has been vacated and sold, and it's in Whitby. The priority is to ensure that the facility is ready to provide low barrier shelter services, so shelter for the homeless, for 45 individuals to transition indoors this fall, and they're hoping that that will be ready by November. And we're doing that because the region is proactively trying to jumpstart the issue of housing for homelessness and people with different incomes, because we have over 331 people on the homelessness, what they call by name list, looking for housing. And we have over 800,000 or 8,000 and more waiting for nonprofit housing for people with different incomes. So it's pretty critical, and I just wanted to let you know that things are moving. We haven't really stopped developing, and there's some great options out there, some great projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further regional council reports? I'm not going to report on mine because it's tomorrow. I don't know how it's going to turn out. Any questions to Councillor Dyes or Crawford? Nope. So moved by Councillor Dyes, second by Councillor Henry, that the report titled Regional Council Update September 18, 2023 be received for information. Those in favor? Well, open the vote. There you go. Actually, my apologies. That was just for Councillor Crawford's written report. Moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Tyler Moore, that the Regional Council's reports of September 18 be received for information. Please vote. That carries. Moving on to business arising from notice of motion, we have 2. First one, utilizing SEPTED at the H. Harwood Plaza, moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Dyes. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Mayor Collier. Yes, thank you. Thank you to all my council colleagues who have really taken to heart the troubles that are happening in the downtown core over the last several years, and in particular, really, really heightened recently. So I know everyone has responded to residents, have had meetings with service providers, with the police, with businesses, and I really appreciate that we are all working together to try and solve this, fix this, work something out here. So this motion talks about the crime prevention through environmental design that was recently completed by the Durham Regional Police Service. I think it was Regional Councillor Crawford who initiated that request. And the police came up with these recommendations, which I think really will make a difference in how the plaza looks and how people feel about how the plaza looks. And that's just as important. So this motion really is to just take action regarding those SEPTED results, and also to take it a step further, that the SEPTED process should be completed annually of that plaza. So asking Mayor Collier as the chair of the Police Services Board to write that letter. And we also have our own staff member the corporate safety officer, I think is the title, Robin Williams, who's also CEPTED certified. So that's also another resource. So I ask for your support for this motion. I think it's really important, and I thank Regional Councillor Dyes for seconding it. Thank you.
Councillor Dyes is the seconder. Did you want to speak to this or no?
Incorporate that staff come back from environmental services and look at give us some recommendations on beautification in the bed where the shrubs are going to be taken out. I guess my concern is being environmentally friendly and understanding this is a huge heat island. I think it needs to be green in some respect, and maybe we can help still qualify for CEPTED as well as having some greenery in those last two beds. Thank you.
I just have a question since I don't see any on the speaking list. Since we have our own staff who are CEPTED qualified, why do we need DRPS to come and do it?
Am I talking? There. Thank you for that question. I did not know that Ms. Williams was certified when this motion was written. I learned that after. But I also feel that that's not part of her duties, I would say. This would be something that the police would do, and I think you as the police chair, the board chair, has a lot of weight to ask for this service.
Yeah, no, I don't. I talked to the chief when I read this on the weekend, and they will do it. It's not a service they normally do, but they said no problem, they will do it. But if we also heard tonight through that, and I can tell you 30% of the calls that DRPS get are not police related. We heard about the mental health, 58% of the calls from Durham West are mental health and in Ajax. So
Right.
they are pulled in all sorts of different directions. I was just suggesting if we have somebody on staff, so I guess through myself to the clerk or whoever is this person, is that part of their job description if they are CEPTED qualified to be able to do that for us? Mr. Meredith?
So the corporate security specialist that we've hired is CEPTED certified. And I'm sure Mr. Romanowski can speak to his planning staff that are all CEPTED certified as well. Or I shouldn't say all, but I would suspect the majority of planners are CEPTED certified, but Mr. Romanowski can
Yeah,
speak to
through
that.
the chair to Councillor Bauer. All of our planners are CEPTED certified, CEPTED level 1, level 2, same training that the DRPS services go through. We can and have conducted CEPTED audits on numerous properties around the town at the request of property owners. We have CEPTED policies within our official plan. We have CEPTED policies and guidelines within our site plan review manuals. All site plan designs go through some CEPTED lens when we're looking at that. So we are trained in that service.
Thank you
So I
for
guess
that.
Just further question, Mr. Romanowski, is would our own planning staff be able to perform this function?
Through the chair to the mayor, yes, we could liaise with the RPS and provide an audit of some sort through the CEPTED lens, for sure.
Okay, so just, I guess still through
Let's
me to
amend it.
Councilor Bauer, just, I don't amend other people's motions, this is your motion, but would you consider that?
I
as
would
police
consider that had I known it. And I didn't, I chose DRPS because that's who did this CEPTED that this motion is based on. If we have our own staff experts who could liaise or do it, I'm certainly happy to have that amendment.
Okay, so you would remove item 4?
Let's remove item 4
Is that okay
or
with you,
change
with the
it
seconder?
for staff. How could we change? It would be changed that staff would,
I just put an X through it.
we would ask staff to do an annual CEPTED review of the
Yes.
Harwood Plaza. Thank
So
you.
you would amend it that planning staff
Be directed
be directed.
to perform an annual CEPTED review of the Harwood Plaza.
So I just am striking Mayor Collier on behalf of council, send a letter asking for, and just putting planning staff be directed to perform, and then leaving an annual CEPTED review at the Harwood Plaza.
Yes.
See?
Look at that. Thank you.
Anybody wish to speak to this? Okay, those in favor, let's open the vote. Accepted.
Accepted. Thank you.
That is carried. Moving on to the next item, which is the provincial sharing of HST, moved by Councilor Lee, second by Councilor Bauer. Councilor Lee, floor is yours. Once you press your button. There you go.
Thank you, Chair. Today alone, I think we've had probably 5-6 budget discussions, and we're not even in the budget process yet. And it just goes to show that municipalities are clamoring for a dedicated funding source outside of the formerly known as the gas tax. I think it's called the Community Building Fund from the feds. I think the province for the past decade plus, and any regional or any of the councillors who've been around for know that they've downloaded so many different services to us with the expectation that municipalities shoulder the burden. And realistically, we can't shoulder the burden outside of raising property taxes. And we are going to see a crunch coming up over the next few years. And it would absolutely help us if the province gave something that they're a dedicated funding source. And I think the HST is a great example of that. If you look at the last whereas, you'll see that since 2016, and we're obviously in 2023 now, it's grown 51% to 35.4 billion. I have no doubt that number is much higher now. If you were to divide that between the 440 municipalities and somehow divide it equally as opposed to by population, that'd be a dedicated funding source of 8.5 million to the town of Ajax alone, which we could absolutely use towards our capital projects, snow removal, as just examples off the top of my head. So this is this notion is not an original notion. It's fielded by AMO. I think the big city mayors were talking about it as well. This is just a chance for our municipality to just say straight up to our member of provincial parliament, this we are in desperate need of help. We have a lot of funding crunches coming up, and it is absolutely unfair to just drop this onto the property taxpayer. So I would appreciate your support on this. Thank you, Chair.
Councilor Bauer is the seconder. Did you wish to speak to it? You don't have to.
Thank you, Mayor Collier. No, I wholeheartedly agree with everything Regional Councillor Lee has said. Dedicated funding stream is a great 3 words. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any further. I will just say this first came up in 2017. I think AMO brought this forward, and we were in very different times then. I didn't support it when it came forward in 2017. That was actually, I think, asking the federal government to increase the HST for 1%, which would go directly to municipalities. Now we're in a much different situation, and one of the things I've had many discussions about this in the last few days with residents calling me about ever since the finance meeting last week, where the region announced almost a 10% direction in taxes. And I've been explaining to them about how property taxes aren't geared to economic growth, where HST is. Every time the price goes up on fuel, and especially with fuel, because fuel, you're paying tax on the tax with the carbon tax. You know, every time the price goes up on food or on anything, 2x4s, whatever you're buying, the HST goes up to the province. And it is absolutely geared to economic growth, where none of our other funding streams are. And I actually did a 680 interview on Friday with Greg Brady about this exact thing, about the HST and us asking for, and we have discussed this with big city mayors as well. And I know Ed Amo has brought this forward again. So absolutely we'll support this. It's much needed. The province has made us do our asset management plan, and we know we have, I think, about a 10% per year funding shortfall there. We've already implemented a 2% budgetary property tax to help do that, but Councilor Lee is exactly right. That extra 35.4 billion just in Ontario would make significant difference to capital budgets and help us get caught up and not affect the taxpayer. So absolutely support. Any further discussion? Okay, let's vote. Fail. Fail. No. Yeah, I'm signing it anyway. It's approved. Currently speaking. Okay, those in favor? Any? None opposed. That is carried unanimously. Moving on to bylaws. Can I get a seconder for the bylaws, please? It's moved by RTM, seconded by Councillor Crawford. Okay. The bylaw numbers 47-2023 to 53-2023 be read a first, second, third time and passed. Any polls? Which one? Pulling 51-2023. Okay, on the balance? Those in favor? Are we going hands? Nope, vote. That carries. On item 51-2023, Councillor Henry.
Thank you. I'll keep this brief through the mayor. I just want to make a concern known when I reread this, because it is going into the last reading, and make sure that although the intention of the bylaw is not to restrict the role of the local councillor play in the political life of the community, it is not used in such, this bylaw. And what I mean by that is with regards to defining the responsibilities of the deputy mayor, which I understand why it needs to be done, that it does not push out responsibilities away from the local councillor, because as I read it, some of the responsibilities, including speaking at different events, which is already done, and we're happy to have the deputy mayor do. I just want to make sure that it doesn't push local councillors out of other things, and I just want clarification on that.
Okay. Who's your question to the clerk?
To the clerk and to the mayor.
Okay. To the mayor, I don't think so. That's not the intent. To the clerk.
Yes, I would agree with that. This is being brought forward at the direction of council from back in May, and the purpose is really just to properly codify the role that this position is already playing and to bring clarity to it. In my opinion, the bylaw before you does not in any way change or diminish the role of a local councillor.
So further to that, I just like to bring up a scenario and just...
Well, just to be clear, a local councillor cannot be deputy mayor according to our...
Understood, and nor do I want to be.
Okay. All right.
No worries on that. I'm very happy where I am, nor do I want to be. So for a scenario, for instance, for when recently it happened, and I won't go into the full details, but somebody was in attendance, they had to leave suddenly. I was given something to read. There would be no, at an event, there's nothing, and I was the only one there, so it was me or nobody. There's nothing that would stop that type of, in my duties, correct?
No.
Just to clarify.
That doesn't make you the deputy mayor, but it does.
Nor do I, again, do I want to be?
Stopping you from presenting the certificate or whatever else.
Okay, just clarifying that. Thank you.
Okay. So item 51, 2023 bylaw, can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Lee, seconded by Councillor Bauer. Open the vote, please. That's carried. Moving on to, is there any notice of motion? Okay. New business and announcements. Oh boy. I go by the speaker list. I got Sterling first. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to announce that this Friday, the 22nd of September, the Region of Durham will be observing the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation with a march to honor residential school survivors. From 10 a.m. to noon, the march will begin at the Pathway to Reconciliation crosswalk located near the south entrance of Durham Regional Headquarters. The opening of this year's march will be done by Chief Kelly LaRocca of Scugog Island First Nation, after which we will depart HQ and continue along Roslyn Road. Hopefully people can join us, because it's a very important event, and we are very honored to have Chief LaRocca there with us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Tyler Morin.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, September 26th at 7 p.m. at Pickering High School, Regional Councillor Marilyn Crawford and our Deputy Mayor, as well as myself, Councillor Rob Tyler Morin, will be having another one of our popular Ward 1 community meetings. issues. We'll be discussing residential intensification, senior snow removal program with a lot of explanation, 599 Kingston Road. Anyway, we've got regulars. We'd love to see new people there once again this coming Tuesday, the 26th of September at 7 p.m. Pickering High School. And check out our social media or emails for registration. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you. Just as the police are doing jobs that they are not necessarily trained or hired for, so do our operation team. So I want to do a huge shout out to our ops team. They're amazing. I was with them. Well, I didn't do any cleanup, but I was there at the Duffins Creek cleanup just last Friday. And, you know, we had to pull 12 guys off of what they would normally have been hired for to come in and clean up an abandoned encampment. And so I just want to thank you for what you are having to do every single day. That is not necessarily what you were hired to do. And I know there's a lot of other people, bylaw included, that are asked to do duties that are far beyond what they were expected to do when they came onto the town. So I just want to say thank you from me. I can't speak for, I would hope I'm speaking for the rest of the council, but for me, I thank you, because that was a disaster, an absolute disaster. And it took 2 truckloads, I think, Tim, right? 3 truckloads. And it had to be done by hand because it was so deep in the woods that it could not be, no equipment was able to go in. So that was a mess, and I really appreciate it. Just wanted to say I was also asked to sit on, and I think it was voted on at COW, on the Durham Region Strategic Plan Advisory Group. So I'm very happy to be a part of that group. I don't know, I guess there's more meetings to be announced, but anyway, that's all I had to say. Thank you.
I think you probably do speak for all of council with the kudos to staff, so thank you very much. Further? All right, no more announcements. Moving on to confirming bylaw, moved by Councillor Dyes, second by Councillor Bauer. The bylaw number 54-2023 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ajax at its meeting held on September 18, 2023, be read a first, second, third time and passed. Open the vote, please. That carries. And finally, moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Tyler Moran, that the September 18, 2023 meeting of the Council of the Town of Ajax be adjourned. Everybody vote. 3 hours.